All right, I call to order this January 21st, 2025 special meeting, the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. We are joined remotely by Chairman Noonan, Commissioners Harrison and Braun. I'll be shepherding this conversation at the request of Chairman Noonan. Our first and only agenda item is continuation of the planning discussion of the draft POCD. As a reminder, we met in November, and so we'll be picking up where we left off. Mr. Wendt or Sargon, any context or anything you'd like to say before we get into the discussion?
No, we finished up with the first chapter, community is home to all. And by my note, we're to start on page 27, which would be the chapter entitled Sustainably Prosperous Community. If I could just go back one second, Mr. Chairman, not an agenda item, but I confirmed just for those of you who are remote, confirmed with those in the room, their availability for February the 4th pursuant to the schedule I sent out of our plan to kind of shepherd the applications we have in the queue. So we will be going forward on February 4th with the public hearing. So that housekeeping item matter aside, we can kind of.
I have a question.
Yep.
What public hearing for one of the new applications?
Yes, I sent you a schedule, a tentative schedule for how we plan to schedule everything that's in the hopper. The next meeting next week will be the continuation of the 2179 Post Road application and its hopeful completion. February 4th, we're going to queue up three new applications that you haven't heard yet. That are one is a contractor storage yard new building on Chamber Street, and then two zoning regulation amendment proposals, one for potentially off-site below market rate units, and one to amendment to the sign code.
Oh, so that has nothing to do with POCD on February 4th.
No. These are applications that we have in the hopper that have been waiting behind other applications that we need to schedule for public hearing. And with other new applications coming in, 4 meetings in February that we have charted out are solely for the purpose of clearing backlogged and new application. Nothing relevant to the POC.
Oh, so you need our feedback now on whether we're available on the extra meeting like February 4th, I guess?
Correct. I have confirmation that we'll have at least 6 members available. So that's enough to go forward. So we will send all those, we'll be sending that out in due course, but just before we published a legal notice, I needed to make sure we had at least a quorum available for that extra meeting date.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Because I had a housekeeping matter related to the POC, but that can wait if we're talking about regular business.
Yeah, I had a quick question. I'm sorry, I got logged off for a moment, so I missed what Mr. Wendt said. Something about extra meetings. I didn't get any emails about that yet.
We sent the email that had the agenda to this meeting. Attached to that was a tentative schedule that laid out all of the applications that we have in the hopper to schedule. And
I'm sorry,
that is
okay.
That's okay, but that entails meetings beyond the regular meetings of the 11th and the 25th, adding the 4th and the 18th to clear. We have a tremendous volume of current applications, and it's going to likely get worse with applications that we expect to be coming.
Yeah, that's fair. I totally get that. Kathy, if I just can just finish. Yeah, that's fine. I'm away on the 18th, so will not be able to be here. But I know there's not a February vacation in Fairfield, but I know some families do go away for the 2 days that they do get off. I just want to be cognizant that neighbors and people who are interested, have the opportunity to hear these hearings.
Yeah, we will do our best to communicate with everybody. I don't know exactly what those dates are, but I appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Okay,
so
thanks.
I found the email. I think this is it. So January 28th is a regular meeting, right? That's
correct.
Next week, and that's the only major thing. There's probably other stuff that would be the 2179, but not the 8-30G version of that, the original one we started like last year of
Correct.
the Fairfield Place application for the mixed use. And then, so the 4th is an extra meeting. Okay. And that has different zoning regulations. Oh, the one about from the Southport application, I guess, for the owner occupied inclusionary zoning. Is that was what that one is, as I recall?
Yes.
Okay, and then
Correct.
February 11th is a regular meeting? No. February 11th is a regular meeting.
February 11th is a regular meeting.
And that's for design. That's for that condo, I don't know, it's kind of like a condo thing. to
Yeah,
bring
there's
us back
still some
forward.
road matter that was heard on the 17th of December and continued.
But this is not related to the application anymore because that was withdrawn. So I was going to actually ask you for some information to help us, but is that a special meeting or that's a regular meeting? That'll be on with other matters then?
February 11th is a regular meeting.
Okay, so there'll be other matters. Maybe I should email you to make it more efficient, but like I have some questions for backup data that might help us when we start reviewing that.
Okay, yeah, please reach out to me via email or give me
I'll
a
do
call.
so.
I'm happy to
Thanks.
talk to you about that.
And then the 18th is a special meeting just for Fairfield U and other stuff, miscellaneous things, and then continuation of the Fairfield Place regular application, not the 8-30G one, right?
Right, in the event we don't finish next week on the 28th, we're looking to slot that onto the 18th of February to continue that discussion.
And then on the 25th, that's a special session only. Is that a special session then?
Nope, February 25th is a regular meeting.
Regular meeting, and that will include the new application for the hotel, Circle Hotel
Correct.
application. Okay, I
Yeah,
understand.
that's likely gonna take more than
crazy.
one night, but you know, that we would
Oh,
tentatively
no
start
vacation.
that on the 25th.
yeah.
Can we get into the conversation? So we're going to, we can turn back to POCD discussion. The last meeting, we were focusing on the blue pages, the recommendations. I'd like to keep doing it that way. And so that would bring us to page 35, the recommendations under sustainably prosperous community. I'd like to go, as we did last time, one by one and just take the temperature of the commission. If we have consensus, we can move on. If
Can
we
I just
need
have a point of order, please, Mr. Chairman? Tom, I don't know who the chairman is tonight, but I'd like to just be very clear on our procedure and that we're following Robert's rules here, because I'm not clear on getting consensus of each chapter versus if we're voting on this and what the official process is. Because I just am not feeling like, I don't know, I'm just a little confused by getting a sense of the body versus what is this like an official vote? That's not clear to me, and I would like the chairman to lay that out.
Yeah, so listen, we did this now at least, I mean, we've been doing this throughout, I think, where we have been.
No, I
going
understand,
through-
but I'm not clear on what's
Oh,
actually being
I
accounted
understand.
for.
I'm doing that. I'm trying to answer your question, Alexis.
Go ahead.
We've been going through at least the draft, and right now we're focusing on the strategy sections, and we're discussing them as we go. And obviously, we need to make an informal kind of decision or consensus as to how we want to move forward. And last time we were talking about various edits, and we accepted some, didn't accept some based on what the consensus was from the group. Now that's a non-binding, it's informal, but obviously something we need to do in order to move forward with this. So obviously, if
Okay,
anybody,
no, I just wanted to get clarity. Okay.
yeah, that's what we've been doing, and we'll keep going forward this evening.
I have
No, I know that, and I know that's what we've been doing. I want to understand what's binding, what's not binding.
Nothing's binding
how I
now. I
feel-
mean, every one of us could have a consensus on a recommendation, and then a member of the public makes some, King Solomon-like argument, and we all change our opinions on that recommendation. So, nothing's binding on anybody.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
I have a follow-up question on that.
Last one, and then we're going to move forward.
Okay, so we have a draft. We're on draft 3. The first draft was made available basically around 18 months ago, August of 23. This draft does not exist as a governing document in our town, but it's already being referenced by multiple applications. I think there's confusion out in the world as to the direction this commission is going in. All these applications are coming in saying, this is the direction we're going in. We want to add multifamily in random places, post road here and there. That's not the direction we're going in. We don't have a direction. We only have one POCD at a time, and the current one is 2016. This one's not due till November of 2026. So I'm wondering, because we do have as a criteria on changing our zoning regulations, as well as I think special permits and special exceptions, one of the criteria is that it's consistent with our POCD, but we're getting applications that are citing this that doesn't exist yet. So I'm wondering if we should clarify this, because
I think it's been, Kathy, I think it's pretty clear that everybody understands that this is a draft. It's been
I don't
asked
think so.
several, I think it's absolutely clear because I think Commissioner Harrison particularly has been reminding everybody as it's being referenced that it's a draft. And I think that even when we've referred to the POCD, like in Porsche, everybody was referring to the current POCD. So it doesn't surprise me in the least bit that applicants are looking at both and just trying to dot their I's and cross their T's. But I would disagree. I think it's pretty clear that this is a draft, that it's not in place. But I think it would be remiss on any practitioner not to potentially reference it because they see at least the draft from this commission. And again, it's non-binding. It may be not where we're headed. It's all informal, but I think it's pretty clear where everything stands and probably shows the need that we just, again, need to keep this moving. So.
Right, I understand that. I feel like when people refer to a document that doesn't exist, it is unclear.
But it does exist. There is a draft.
No, it does not
It's
exist.
clear it's a draft. It's not accepted. It's not effective. That's been clear as well. So,
and our commission is clear that we're telling the world, we cannot rely on a draft when we consider criteria on our decision-making on any application.
if you think that needs to be better, clear in the hearing, so be it. But I mean, listen, let's move forward with where we are now.
I also want to clarify the sort of deadlines and timeframes because.
Let's do that offline. We're here on the POCD.
Well, but this.
I would like to do that in public if we can, because I think that's a matter of what we should be doing in public, not offline.
Well, I mean, this is public, but I mean,
Well, there's a few
right
things.
now we're here to go through the POCD.
Right.
We've already taken 10 minutes
Mr. Nguyen.
out of the time to do that. So let's go through the POCD.
Well,
Mr. Nguyen.
I can.
Commissioner Braun, can you just, Mr. Nguyen?
I can speak to that briefly. Okay. And we talked about this last time. While you're technically correct, our 10-year requirement under the law to adopt the POCD isn't until November of 2026, since the last plan was adopted in November of 2016. Having said that, so that's technically correct, but keep in mind that this project, this draft, is 7 years in the making, and as you referenced earlier, 18 months since the first draft was released. So yes, you are technically correct, but as we explained before, we have next steps to this process that we're looking to try to implement after official adoption, that is then taking up the work of substantive revisions to the zoning regulations. So those are things that we're anxious to move forward on, in the fact that we are seeing applications that are referencing this draft. Again, is, I think, testimony to the fact that it is a public document. It's been out there for 18 months, and this has been a 7-year process to get to here. So yes, while it's technically correct to meet a statutory timeframe, we have more time. I think because of the applications we're seeing, we would benefit. I think it would be a benefit to the commission and the public to adopt a document that creates some clarity on what the consensus vision is going forward. So we're not in a position where we're debating whether it's a draft or not a draft. It becomes ultimately an adopted document, so we can give better guidance to the public and to the development community.
Well, part of my concern is that we're just getting new input now from like land acquisition. We got input today. We got something else from Sustainability Task Force. And
And we can speak to those things, but again, that's a byproduct of having an 18-month period in which a draft is released and yet to get to the finish line. So until we have an adopted plan, at some point you need to decide what the plan is going to be, and not keep having an open.
Commissioner Braun, can I suggest, I know we received input today from the Land Acquisition Committee and from Sustainable Fairfield. We'll have, I think everyone's going to have an opportunity to comment on those. I suggest that we try to get through as much of this conversation about the current draft as we can, and then before we adjourn the meeting tonight, we can discuss next steps and where we go from here.
okay.
And then Commissioner Corsilla, we also have feedback from the Board of Ed chairman as well that I think we should be including in that discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, we have several documents that we've had that are recommending some things, and when we get to the respective sessions to which they pertain, we're ready to engage in that conversation.
Commissioner
And
Randolph.
Can we
Kathy,
get emails
Kathy,
forwarded to us? Because
Kathy,
One
I've had
line,
my hand up for
Commissioner Braun.
a while here.
Commissioner Braun.
So I think we're all on the same page. And what I was, before we started on this topic, I was going to suggest that we reserve 15 minutes or 10 minutes at the end to define clear next steps and perhaps some timelines and objectives of when we want to get this thing done. Because it's been many years in the making, 18 months as a draft, and the public is confused because there is a published draft, which is being referenced. Others are saying it's not complete. I would like to hope as a commission, set some objectives on when we can complete this.
I think that's reasonable. I think let's before we hit 10 o'clock, we can have a discussion about next steps.
Great.
I don't know what happened. It changed the
in
view.
terms
Go
of,
ahead. Tom, let's get this started.
Okay. All right, everybody, if you could look at page 35, we're on strategy A, promote redevelopment in strategic locations that will strengthen the economy and grow the local tax base. Just give us 1 second when
page
we,
we're on.
35. It's a blue page under sustainably prosperous community.
I feel like the heading of sustainably prosperous community is not descriptive and it should be changed. This is really another sort of development chapter. It should be called housing and commercial development.
Commissioner Braun, I
mostly-
think my recollection, I could be wrong, my recollection from the November meeting was that we had a compromise that we seemed to agree on, that there would be subheaders that were more descriptive to your suggestion.
What were those subheaders?
don't
I
have
didn't really agree with that, but I'm
Strategy
not
A,
sure if there was
strategy B.
consensus.
Read as subheaders. Do they not?
Again, I think never mind, I'm not going to say anything.
So I see there's some red lines that have been made. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Are we in agreement that those red lines are accurate?
Well, can I point out a couple of other things? It seems to have maps and plans in here that are kind of a little bit redundant to what's in the housing chapter when they're talking about development in the downtown and metro center area and the TOD plan. This whole chapter should probably be consolidated with that section because it seems to overlap a lot.
There
Okay,
is some.
quick question. Yeah. Can we just reference what page we're all on? I don't think that was made clear by the chairman.
Page 35.
35,
Thank you.
the blue page.
I'm
There is
looking at a
some-
specific page, which I have some comments on, page 31.
We're on 35.
We're 35,
Commissioner
yeah.
Braun.
We skipped over 31.
Yeah, for now, what we're doing is going through, focusing on the blue pages that have the recommendations. That was what we were doing last time, so we're just going to continue along the same track. We can discuss other items, but for now, we'd like to try to get through the strategy recommendations.
Well,
Listen, that's fine. But I personally look at, look, I'm not here about speed. I'm here about making sure this is the right document. I would like to go page by page. I don't know what we did, that's just how I feel.
Just as a lawyer in my practice, I have a conceptual problem with condemning ourselves in any document we put forth. And when we have words like, this is a barrier, that should come out. That's negative. It makes us look like we're doing something wrong. So I think on page 31, it says we have barriers to development. That should be removed and completely revamped. We're talking about some of the information is outdated. A lot of it relates to the TOD study that was done in 2018, adopted in 2019, but has data going back to 2015, almost a decade ago. I don't know if we should be doing that. If we should be focusing on the TOD study like that. And those are specific things in specific pages.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kathy. I would be aligned with that.
Also,
Where's the barrier language that you're talking about?
regulatory barriers in a few places, but one of them is has those, they look like a piece of cake, those pictures of how you can change the floor area ratio. Page 32, I'm looking at one page. Regulatory barriers. We don't have to use that language. We can use any, we can word craft that. We need to. And it's, it says these standards substantially and unnecessarily limit. There's a positive way of saying, why don't we consider studying the possibility of having more of X, Y, or Z without saying we're doing something bad.
Yeah, the word barriers comes up at least 3 times throughout the document. And I agree. I don't know why we would be putting ourselves down. Seems kind of odd.
And I have an issue with multifamily housing. Right now, the biggest thing I hear from anyone around town is we're turning into a city. People are tired of apartment buildings. We're going to get more with the HSRDGs coming in. And we already have so many that we've approved that aren't even built yet. Metro Center, 81 Black Rock Turnpike, Castle Ave, Stilson Road, down on Pease Ave.
Can I make just one comment? So this section of the plan was a partnership with the Economic Development Commission and the Affordable Housing Committee in terms of getting to some of these proposals and draft policies. The reason why this exists as a different chapter is because we do want mixed use with a combination of multifamily and commercial within our commercial corridors. If we're just talking about housing, we can talk about exclusive 100% housing opportunities, regardless of whether that's duplexes, fourplexes, lower density, middle housing, or even larger apartment buildings. And allow those in some of our TOD areas if we're looking at that as an overlay, a large area where in some places it might be appropriate for those to be 100% residential, or in some places whether we want those to be mixed use projects. But when we're focusing on the commercial corridors, and in our discussion with the Economic Development Commission, one of the things that they said was that our commercial corridors, some of those buildings are reaching the end of their livelihoods in terms of the way that they were constructed and future usefulness. And in order to make a more viable environment for our commercial property owners, we have to engage in the mixed use conversation, which is what the discussion of multifamily is within this particular chapter. And also, in keeping with sustainable principles, introducing mixed use as it relates to more walkable communities, which we hear from both from Fairfield Senior Advocates, the Sustainable Fairfield Task Force. So I think we're trying to, within this chapter, hit on all of those things, but it does come with a discussion of mixed use housing as part of that solution.
I think mixed use is one thing.
Hey, Kathy, just 1 second. So
Sure.
just as an approach to this, so we try to make some progress. I think that what Emmeline just said is actually summarized in strategy A and strategy B, the headers and the information below there. So I concede that there might be some wordsmithing, some corrections on the information before, but if we can figure out where we're going, which is on the blue page, then work backwards from that to make any refinements to the predecessor information, we'll make progress. If we get stuck on what's beforehand, we'll never get to what we want to conclude. So if we could focus on the blue pages and then come back with written comments on what's before that, I think we'll have a chance to get alignment. But if we just get caught in the wordsmithing before and not focus on what strategy A and strategy B are, then we won't make any progress. So it's a process piece. And I understand that there might be some corrections, clarifications in what precedes this, but A and B are the outcome and summary of this section. So if we can focus on that, then we can try to get consensus and then go back and fix the preceding information, if that's okay with you guys.
Well, so did we already agree on the heading that it could be reworded? I don't remember what we said. Housing. and
No.
We
commercial
said
development.
last time, again, we gave you a litany of meetings and discussion dates that have taken place over the course of time. One of those was a draft outline with these titles that you all kind of bought into quite a while ago. But the compromise, if you will, that was reached at the last meeting was to address your and others' concerns about their titles, was to have some subheaders underneath them for better clarity if you are concerned about the clarity of what the chapter title means. But that's kind of laid out in the plan foundation section and explained it, and we talked about that last time. But the takeaway from that was some clarifying language underneath what those are.
Appreciate that.
Just
Thank
to-
you, Jim.
And
Yeah.
just to be clear on where we are, the red lines and the black lines were consolidation of comments from whom?
The red lines are a result of the discussion that we've all had
Okay,
after the second draft was
Right.
released. And so this is the third pass at it.
yeah. So can we just review the red lines and black lines and then collect any written comments on the predecessor materials? Is that
I'd suggest that as we go through these, to the extent there's red lines or black lines in any of them, Emmeline can explain
Yeah.
anything, any additions or edits. Sure.
I actually converted my entire PDF into a Word. I'm doing my own red lines, which is why I'm getting down into the nitty gritty detail. But you know what I could do? Last time I sent just edits to the strategy section of housing, which we sort of left without a consensus on. But I think if I'm submitting something like that and we're discussing it, that should have been posted. And I'm going to ask that be posted. And then if I do red lines on any strategy section, even though I'm a commissioner, it should be posted because this is something we're talking about. It should be transparent to the public what we're talking about. I'm going to ask if you post what I did last time in November. It was red lines. You know, I had suggested a gateway district, and that actually flows into strategy A right here. You know, in this second chapter on, I don't have a page number. There's no page number.
35.
Oh, 35, yeah.
so Kathy, to that point, what in strategy A on page 35 would you like to see changed or revised?
Can we go one by one? I'd rather go one by one. So
You're,
there's some.
well, it's
there's some
okay, number one,
Okay.
it's
So
referring.
Commissioner Braun, can we,
Yeah.
Commissioner
sorry.
Braun, could we start with what's on there and then if
Yeah,
there
yeah,
are
let's-
additions we think we need to discuss, we can have that
Yeah.
at the end?
Okay, I don't have the red line prepared, but I can, you know, whatever, but let's just go through it. So strategy A says promote redevelopment in strategic locations to strengthen the economy and grow local tech.
We all have the document, so.
Okay, so
Okay.
strategy
So
one
for
and
the
two.
Can we just talk
strategy
one at a
A1,
time? Can we just talk one at a time? I'm not hearing everybody, please.
Strategy 1A, promote transit-oriented development by implementing the recommendations for the Black Rock and downtown station areas in a community as home to all. Does anyone have suggested changes to that, or is there consensus on that strategy?
I would say delete that because I don't have a consensus on that. I don't agree that we should extend it. I don't like
You
that
don't agree that we should
recommendation.
extend what?
Okay, that goes along with strategy two, which is, it's the same thing. The community that's a home to all, which is the chapter on housing. These two items, 1 and 2 in strategy A, are the same thing. They refer back to the housing chapter. And so strategy 1, you just read, strategy 2 is to extend center district all the way to Mill River. And I didn't agree with that. That's why I promoted a transition district as sort of a compromise. We haven't done a parking study. Or a traffic study. And it's a very specific guideline. And by the way, we're already getting applications talking about it. So
Commissioner Brum, my recommendation was going to be that we have the conversation about extending the district at the end of this section, understanding that it is the more controversial one. So we're focused on strategy A1, Mr. Wynn.
this is A1, isn't it? A1 and A2.
So A1 and A2, if I can help you, Kathy, in the document that we sent you, again, along with the agenda, was kind of a summarize of the bullet points of where we were at the last meeting. And you're correct that there was some consensus compromise language that was recommended that's in that document, which would likely also need to be considered here. Strategy A3 in the housing section was reworked to say, consider expanding a central business district consistent type zone or some other transition zone in whole or in part west of on Route 1. Expansion of this more walkable district east to South Benson Road should also be considered. So that language was modified at our last discussion in November. And I would suggest, since it's similar to what strategy A2 says, that same compromise language be modified here.
But we didn't agree on the compromise language last time.
We did. You may not have personally, but the consensus of the group was that to move forward with that consensus, that compromise language.
So
But that's not binding, right? I mean, I'm kind of, that's why
No,
I'm
of course,
confused.
no, of course not. The whole, what we're trying to do is distill this down to a, dare I say, final draft that we go to public hearing with for your ultimate consideration in
Yeah.
adoption. So this is a discussion of what we put forth as the final draft to again go back to public hearing for your ultimate adoption. So
I think that
while
would
I
be-
understand that individuals may not agree, the idea of this exercise is to, at least, is there consensus enough to move forward with the recommended language so we can get to that final draft.
Wait, so I thought
Right.
Vice Chairman Corsilla just said, we're going to talk about this at the end of the session tonight. Are you saying, Mr. Wentz, that we already have a consensus on these two items from last time?
Certainly on item number 2, I would say yes, and it's in the bulleted document that we sent to you with the agenda documents.
So that means you are saying that this commission rejected my Gateway District compromise language in favor of simply extending, the higher
will read it.
density.
No, I'll read it. I'll read the consensus language that was our takeaway from that discussion. That it would say, consider expanding a central business district consistent type zone or some other transition zone in whole or in part west along Route 1. Expansion of this more walkable district east to South Benson Road should also be considered.
So we took out going to Sasko Hill Road or Mill River.
I'll read it again. Consider expanding a central business district consistent type zone or some other transition zone in whole or in part west along Route 1.
I don't remember saying that, but okay.
Well, that's why we put the document together, so we wouldn't have to keep going backwards to what we've already discussed.
So, I mean, in light of that, I think 1 and 2 kind of go along with that. Is that a fair statement?
In my opinion, yes.
Commissioner Levy.
I'd like to simply point out, the language is not an endorsement one way or the other as to what we are doing in terms of extending districts. The language is that we would consider it. And in the future, we do want to consider it because it's an issue. And at the time that it's ultimately considered and put to a vote, at that point, it'll be decided whether yay or nay. But for the moment, the only thing before me is whether or not we should consider it in the future. So I don't know where the problem is.
I think that's a good point.
I think in the other section on housing, we mandated some kind of parking and traffic study to be done first. I don't remember, but that should be here if this is going to be here.
Well, we'll just, to consider something, we would need many factors to evaluate. So by limiting us to one factor would be probably inaccurate. And so
There's also, I'll point out, there's also a recommendation in this section that relates to parking, so if we can have that conversation shortly.
So, did we get through one and did we, I guess the suggestion was that we all agree that we will consider it? Did we get through two?
Obviously, there's a desire to consider it.
Okay,
I don't know if you want to do votes like you did at the last meeting.
probably.
Yeah,
Hey
do
guys,
we?
I'm still not sure what page we're on because I don't know if my PDF.
35.
Okay, and I just asked the chairman just to be very clear on page numbers going forward.
Page
Thank you.
35, I'll indicate if we're move on to another page.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay, strategy A3, explore a home.
Do we want to vote on this just to put it to rest or?
We want to, okay, everybody okay with that? Can we,
I'm
if
not
you're
voting on
on-
anything right now till I see the whole ball of wax.
Where's
because there's a lot of
A3
language.
on page 35?
Why don't we go through the edits and stuff instead of doing a vote? I thought this is more of a consensus.
I think what we'd like to do, I think the most productive way to do this is to get some indication if there is majority or more support for each of these strategies, for each of these recommendations before we move on to the next one.
That's what we did last time, was to make sure that there was a consensus from the commission on the draft and how we want to present the draft moving forward. So I think that's last time what we did was, I'm not sure if I took like official votes as opposed to looking and seeing everybody's hands. It's tough when three of us are not going to be there, but you know, to the best we can, I think at this point with 1 and 2, right? I think we're doing 1 and 2. Is there consensus to at least leave the language as is right now? And for me, it's a yes.
Any other difference? Yes. Commissioner Harrison?
No, are we voting? I'm not clear on what's happening.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to vote no.
Okay.
I'm voting
Commissioner
no
Braun?
also. I'm voting
Okay.
no.
Okay, it sounds like there's still consensus to move forward with items 1 and 2. Commissioner Collins said something you want to say?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could just maybe put a header in the beginning that, so this isn't waved in front of us, everything coming in from the developers, and kind of use it as a, you know, they're almost, I mean, I'm sure they know it's a draft, but it's been, I mean, I think the last submission on that, what was the Soundview, they kept referencing to things that were in the draft. So if we could make a clear page of like, this is not to, you know, we haven't come to a final draft. We're in the midst of working on it. That way it doesn't really get put into some sort of proposal that they're putting in and referencing things that are in this draft instead of a final, you know, from the, you know, instead of the 2016 is what they really should be referring to, opposed to a draft that we're working on.
Yeah. If you're addressing that to me, I think it's clear that it's a draft, and I don't want to belabor it, but I think we've already had that discussion in terms of.
No, but maybe make it clear to like, please don't use any
Even
references.
if it's
to-
draft, I mean, even if it says draft on there, they're going to refer to it. I mean,
Right,
it's just-
it's going to be
it's a
referred
normal
to as this is a
practitioner
public
thing.
document. When the commission is deliberating on an application, it's going to be up to you to determine what's relevant information and what's not.
Okay, let's get back to, still on page 35, strategy A, recommendation 3, explore a home off professional business office overlay that would permit owner occupied housing to include appointment-based professional businesses. Any objections to this?
No.
No's in the room.
No.
Yeah, this is a direct change from a previous discussion on a previous draft.
Okay,
My only
Yeah.
thought is perhaps not limited, maybe to say or other similar, just so it's not limited to these specific professions.
I think that's fine. It says such as, but I think. that's
Okay, such as,
fairly.
Again, we're exploring.
right,
You can have that specific conversation when it gets to the zoning regulation changes.
got it.
Yes.
Okay, we have consensus on that one. Recommendation 4, still on page 35. Explore local community-oriented retail uses as an accessory for corner-located residential properties such as corner cafes. Any objections? No's in the room.
I
Remote.
just want to understand this a little more. Maybe Jim, do you mind just explaining what
No,
this
this
recommendation
actually,
means?
I'll defer to Mr. Our current, our chairman in the room here, because I think this language came out of a suggestion and a discussion that he led, went back when we were.
No, I
discussing
remember the
second-
discussion, but not entirely. And I remember, I think,
Yeah,
being aligned with it, but I just want to just make sure I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, Commissioner Harrison, I think there's a wide range of details that could become part of this. I think the language is meant to be, exploratory, as it says, because this there could be different details and restrictions on this in terms of specifically what zones this would be in, specifically what kinds of businesses would be permitted. But I think the general concept is to make it so that certain types of, cafes and
Would this be,
similar types of.
okay, that's fine. So when we say corner, are we specifically saying this is in a corner lot? Like that's what do we?
That we may want to put that in quotes. That's really sort of a colloquial term. More
Then
than
I would put that in quotes then, because and again, I think we should define these terms just to be super clear. And I'm sure
Yeah, I
that'll come
think
later
that's
in the
fair.
regulations.
Or
But yeah, I
i.e.
think
Or i.e.
we'll get.
This,
I mean,
I
not
think-
everybody. Can I just finish real quick, please? I don't think everybody, is always, a zoner or into planning and zoning like we are. So I would just be very clear in number 4 what this exploration, means. That's all.
I also, if I could too, this is giving you, the commission, a very long laundry list of potential items to act on within the next 10 years. And some of them, when you get to the zoning regulation amendments, you say, let's focus on these. We don't have the bandwidth to focus on whatever, like a subcategory is, right? So this is entirely within your control when you get to the zoning regulation revision process. And so, this is really just a broad policy objective, and you really get into the details when you do your zoning regs.
Well, thank you.
How is that? When the POCD is passed, does that immediately trigger a zoning revision process?
No, we have that. No. I mean, we have that as a portion of our contract with our consultant, because even for zoning enforcement reasons, we have reasons to clarify some portions of our regulations just through things that our staff people, our zoning enforcement officers have had issues with because certain things are not clear enough within our zoning regulations.
Well, that could be done right now. That doesn't need a POCD. We amend our regulations all the time without using a consultant or having a new POCD. Why can't we do that now to help the ZEO?
Well, again, we're trying to harbor our energies so we can get the best efficiency of doing this rather than doing it multiple times, having kind of a comprehensive review of it. But going back to your initial question, no, adoption of this plan, as I tried to spell out in our public hearing, adoption of this plan doesn't implement any of its strategies. It just identifies things that you want to consider going forward. And so after adoption, and when discussion of substantive changes to the regulations are had, it will be up to the commission to prioritize which of these recommendations should happen sooner, which are short-term recommendations, which are midterm recommendations, which are more long-term recommendations. So we can then harness our energies a little more.
Well, part of the consultant's project was to reformat the regulations, and we've gotten a
Correct.
draft, but we haven't looked at that yet. Maybe we should look at that. That has nothing to do with the POCD. That's just reformatting them so they're easier.
Let
to
me
work
jump in quickly. We had this conversation, I don't know, 1 year and a half, 2 years ago, whenever it was. And we agreed that we would go through POCD first and then the formatting, changing the format of the regulations and then substantive regulations. So we're still in this POCD mode, and we're going to have to, that's just a decision we made way back when. I don't remember offhand. So that's where we're going with this.
But then we were told there's a deadline to use the ARPA funded consultant. And so he has like whatever, 50 grand left to use. It seems to me like that should not be a reason to try to push through amending our actual substantive regulations when that could easily be used on reformatting them.
I think the
and
reformatting is
POCD.
basically done.
There were
We
three.
haven't looked at it yet. We haven't reviewed it yet.
I think we have, actually.
No,
I think
we
we've
haven't.
seen a little bit of it.
Oh, we haven't had any discussion over,
I know, because
Okay.
we agreed to go to the POCD. So, and I don't think it had anything to do with
independent projects. One does not rely on the other. Reformatting our regulations.
Well, I mean, here we are with our POCD and where we are with everything else. So we have to go one at a time with things. We can't be doing the same thing during the same meeting. So this was a
I
decision
understand
we
that,
made.
but
Commissioner Braun, can I finish, please? This
Yeah.
is the decision we made. So, I mean, listen, in a few months, if we go back on that decision and we want to do the formatting, fine. But right now we're doing the POCD. So I think we should stick with that, especially right now.
All right, before we get back, I see a member of the public with his hand up. Just a reminder to the public, this is a public meeting, but not a public hearing, so we are not taking public comment this evening. Okay.
I was just wondering where you're meeting. I thought we were meeting at the training center. I'm here and there's the sign-up sheet, but you're somewhere else. Where is this meeting taking place?
We're at Independence Hall as it's noted on the agenda.
Okay. Staying on page 35, strategy A, recommendation 5, explore the redevelopment of the former bus turnaround on Easton Turnpike as village commercial with a neighborhood design district designation. Objections to this recommendation? None in
I
the
think,
room, any online?
I'm gonna vote no on this one for now. I think we got some really good feedback from people who live in that area, just saying it's just maybe not feasible. There's just not enough room. It could not be safe. So I'm gonna listen to the residents who live there and vote no for this for now.
No objection. I'm just because I need to hear that
Oh,
myself. No objection.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wasn't clear from the chairman I thought we were voting.
Yeah, is it no objection, Tom? Sorry.
I think
Hold on. Tom, did you ask is there an
I
objection?
asked for
or is there
objections,
no?
and I hear one from Commissioner Harrison.
Yes, I thought we got some really good feedback from people on this one. So I'm gonna, and I was intrigued by this at first, but I'm gonna just go with what the residents provided on the feedback and just have this is probably not a feasible thing right now. Thank
All
you.
right, acknowledged. Thank you.
I think with this, it's this explore redevelopment of a turnaround. It really does seem like a great idea until you hear comment from people who live around there who say it's dangerous, it's this, it's that. So, I mean, I think a lot of these recommendations we have are way too specific. We can explore a lot of things to do some development in the commercial, village district like Stratfield or Greenfield Hill, whatever, but we don't have to identify them. It could just be a general policy that we try to find ways to find places where we can have a village district or a mixed use area. But the minute we put this level of detail, it becomes kind of a directive. And I think we're going to get a lot of pushback whenever we have a public hearing if we just go down this road with so many specific directives. I think a lot of what we do should be, as Chairman Noonan had said at one point, should be soft. Don't put these specific neighborhoods or streets in there. Just say, consider this, but do a traffic and parking study first. That's sort of a general thought on the level of specificity in this. And it will also lead to a lot of development applications, which are going to, use the POCD as support, which, maybe we don't like it. Maybe it's not good. I think we can do a lot of softening of the language throughout the document instead of having such specific, almost directives to change our regulations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Levy.
I think it's important that the document be clear, that it should say the things that we want to consider. The fact that we've heard some feedback in earlier discussions of the POCD doesn't mean that at such time as should we decide to put this on an agenda, as a specific proposal, that we will gather a great deal of feedback, some of which may be very different from what we've heard in the context of the POCD. So with respect to exploring the redevelopment of the former bus turnaround, that is something that I think is clear, something we may want to explore, and it may be something that we will totally dismiss if it ever becomes before us based on what's been said to date, or there may be good reasons out there why it is something to go forward on. But right now, avoid getting into the substantive voting or determination of the specifics and focus on the direction of items that need to be addressed by us and by the public. I think we would do ourselves real service.
Thank you.
So are you saying we should have these specifics?
Yes,
I think it's going to create a lot of stress and pushback from the
I
public
think
when they
as
see their
lawyers, we
neighborhood.
try and be
I'm sorry.
clear. And when we, and try and make very clear our ideas and make them specific so that people can understand it. Loosey-goosey doesn't do anybody any good.
Well, it's a vision document, which means broad concepts. It's not supposed to sort of direct us exactly what we need. If you look at other POCDs, like for Westport or Greenwich, they don't have this type of very specific language. They have broad concepts, which is what the public likes. They like a walkable community. They like mixed use. When I know what they don't like tall buildings all the way down the post road. So, and a lot of neighbors didn't think this should go here. To me, if we have all this type of specific language in here, it's going to have a lot of pushback at the one mandatory public hearing we have to hold, and then we're going to have to go back and change the document. Why not just soften it up now? The concept is good. It's a great concept. I didn't know it was going to be a problem in that neighborhood until people showed up and said it's a problem in that neighborhood. And we can always take it up later. That's what we do. We take things up all the time for text amendments.
Okay, I hear the concerns from Commissioners Braun and Harrison. It sounds like otherwise there is support for that proposal. Recommendation.
Yes, for me.
Sorry, Chair Noonan.
Yes.
I just could say yes for me. I mean, unless there's a thought about just saying, being general, explore redevelopment in certain areas and then listing it. The specificity I think is important though. So I'd leave it as it
I
is.
would like to make it a little I mean, I would go along with it if the language was a little softer. I mean, I think it's important that we listen to the residents who live there. I always think they know their neighborhoods best, and I'd like to respect that. So I think I would soften up this language, and I'm sure we can find a compromise here.
Yeah, I have to agree with that myself.
It's pretty soft. Yeah, what's softer?
What's the compromise language then?
I'm just thinking.
I really like to go into the concerns of the residents, and I'll go back to those letters if they're.
But I mean, what we're exploring, I have a suggestion. Is it the specific site that you're having trouble with?
I think it's because it's yes, because I think it's so site specific.
Okay, so if something like explore opportunities for creating additional village type districts within a neighborhood design district designation without being
Yes, yes.
granularly site specific, is that concept? I think it's
But
better.
yes, I am in agreement with that. Yeah, and thank you for
That's fine.
suggesting that.
I think that's fine.
I like that, Jim.
I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
So how are we changing it? We're removing the address?
We're moving the specificity, as Jim said.
Hang on one second. So Commissioner Delgado.
Yeah, I was thinking, I understand the thought in making it a little more vague and I guess in some terms softer, but I think it's still worthwhile to use that as an example.
Well, are there other
So-
examples too? Why just that one?
I think if I could just speak to the uniqueness of this particular location, this is area that is presently within state DOT right-of-way that's not being utilized for anything. So this was called out as a specific example because the engagement for this would be a very different procedure. Like we'd have to engage DOT first. We would have to see whether they're willing to even explore something like this. And then, keep in mind, like a study, if we were looking to see whether or not, first of all, the DOT would even want to explore giving back some of the right of way for this, there would be a study that would speak to, does this make sense from a traffic perspective? Does this make sense from a size of a potential parcel perspective? So I think that this particular example had just, I think, different potential partners in this particular proposal. I think for other ones, as Jim had said, if we're looking at, can we, this has come up again and again, walkability, wanting to have 20-minute neighborhoods, things that are more walkable to other people in other places. This was even in the Sustainable Fairfield letter that came just today. Can we look at Greenfield Hill, for the Greenfield Center, for example, and expanding that for greater walkability for folks who want to
Can I
get
just stop you
to.
really quickly? Sorry, if I may, could we then put that language in this and just, by the way, I really appreciate what you just said, because that's great, information. Could we put state DOT or whatever language that you just said, in this proposal? So it's
Well,
clear, because maybe they're just unique to this one site in town. Is that what I'm hearing?
This is unique to this one site because it's
Okay.
right now, it's not private property. It's public right of way.
Then I'm gonna if I'm and then I'm gonna switch my vote to a yes to go forward with it. I think Explorer is pretty innocuous. It's pretty early stages, so I think it's fine. Thank you.
So we're taking out where it says that specific location, or is using.
Well, I
that
think
only as an
I think what Mrs. Harrigan said was because it's so specific to that area of town, because there are multiple stakeholders involved, that it has to be defined. That's what I'm hearing, right?
But if you wanted to expand it to add, if the board felt, and again, this speaks to some of the comments that we've received, that we want to look at expanding the potential for smaller neighborhood designed commercial districts to allow more walkability to stuff in more neighborhoods, then that would be something that we could also explore in addition to just that one example.
For example, like, I don't see anything in here about the Greenfield Hill Village District or Stratfield. Is there anything in here about fixing those up to make them with sidewalks, for example? That came up in one of our applications. There's no sidewalks. Maybe this is the section that could talk about any sort of village district. They certainly need attention. Tunx's Hill, all these districts need a lot of attention to make them walkable, aesthetically pleasing, and if we're going to do a study, we should do a study of all our village districts. I think everybody would appreciate having.
I think that's a different, Kathy, I think what you're talking about has a different intent of what they're saying here. This is exploring the redevelopment of additional locations, not the improvement of existing. That's the intent, correct?
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying, we agree with, but that's a different topic.
Well, do we have that? I don't think we have what I just said in this document. Maybe
We do.
Jim or Emily could tell us.
When we get into the interconnected chapter, I think there's some more language along the lines that just referenced.
Yep.
Interconnected to me is transit or internet, and it should be in this section if we're talking about commercial / residential / mixed use development. It should be.
But this is under the strategy, it says promote redevelopment, right? So this is redeveloping unused areas. And I think Chairman Delgado's suggestion is, as Commissioner, I'm sorry. As Mr. White was saying, make it more general. And then Mr. Delgado was saying, for example. So, can we agree on that?
We are happy to make that
And
change.
Kathy, I think your point about
Amenable.
improving the sidewalks and walkability is definitely something we all agree on, except I think that's in a different section of the document.
Well, it seems to me like it should be in this chapter. This chapter is about basically mixed use development, right?
Yeah, but redevelopment though, like in strategy A, as Commissioner Randolph said. So, I mean, is there consensus on the proposed new language? Jim said, keeping it general and then using a for example to hit this specific site because of what Ms. Harrigan said. It's a yes for me.
Heads are nodding in the room.
I don't understand it, so I'm gonna say no for now.
Okay, fair.
Alexis,
Uh,
I'm not sure. I think it was a yes for you, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Strategy.
you. Thanks for the
recommend-
discussion, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Page 35, strategy A, recommendation 6, explore the possibility of leveraging brownfield funding to support redevelopment along Kings Highway. Any objections?
I guess I need to understand what that means. Isn't it the private applicants that usually get the brownfield funding for their projects, like on 81 Black Rock Turnpike?
It is, but there's also possibilities for local support for such funding if there's a project that is going to achieve a desired outcome. The Kings Highway, we've talked a lot, that the Kings Highway corridor, particularly east of exit 24, is an area that could use some reinvestment. We've got particularly the former Miller Volkswagen property that's lying idle that needs a fair amount of environmental remediation. And so that is at least one site that is going to need some brownfield funding before anything can be redeveloped there. And we've had some applications in the past that past commissions have thought hey, this would be a great reinvestment opportunity in this corridor to hope. But it's not super specific. It's just more generic.
And this can also apply to the Hardy and Harmon site?
So Handy and Harmon. Yeah.
Handy and Harmon, sorry.
Yes, the idle, there's a
H&H.
leftover piece of Handy and Harmon property across the street from the Whole Foods development that's in the same kind of position.
That should be open space. That's right on the river, isn't it? Isn't that on Ash Creek?
Yes.
It is along on, yes, it's part of the, it's not necessarily Ash Creek, but a tributary that ends up into Ash Creek, yes.
Okay.
So
Any objections from our remote commissioners?
None. Seems
The
pretty easy
brown-
for 6.
yeah,
It's
I
pretty
feel like
vague, so I don't see any
it's vague and
issues.
I'm sorry. It's
Got it.
There's vague and I can't find anything in the chapter itself that talks about it. So you wonder why it's here if we're not going to give any detailed backup for what it means and what it's about. And that's just along Kings Highway because Handy and Harmon is actually on Black Rock Turnpike or Grassmere. I'm not.
Well, it would be the
across from
terminus
Whole
of
Foods.
Kings Highway, where Kings Highway intersects with Grassmere Avenue.
Okay.
Let's move
And what are
on.
the other brownfields? Like there's brownfields along the Post Road too, right? There's that nickel plating place across from Exide, across the river from Exide. That's a brownfield, isn't it? Or actually,
It's
it's
an
still
active-
functional.
Just a
It's
quick
an
question, I guess. Why Kings Highway versus other areas of town?
I think these were identified through economic development, maybe?
Well, again, to that end, I mean, if you want to put a period at the end of redevelopment and eliminate along Kings Highway, that would be even a broader statement.
Or put.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause
the-
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I.e. Kings Highway
Yeah.
area.
I mean, because I think we're probably all in agreement that Kings Highway is ripe for investment. And I'm sure a lot of us would support that. So I just curious why. Yeah, I would like to see, i.e., Kings Highway.
I'd like to see a map showing where the brownfields are in town. We must have a dozen, right?
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Well,
Do we
for
have a
now-
map of that?
Are everyone
sure.
good with that proposed change?
Yeah. Hey, just Tom Priscilla, just real quick, can we just ask if is there a map of the brownfields? Because if we're going to talk about it in the POCD, I think it would be relevant to include a map.
There are state maps. Brownfield locations are well known by all.
Can we put them in
So
the
if-
POCD is my question.
It might be redundant and not out of date. Maps change, so we can make a reference to the state maps, but I think putting a map in might create some ambiguity.
Right, no, it's fine. I can ask Mark for a map too.
I think
I'm sure he has it.
I think this POCD should have more visuals to help illustrate things. I would like to see a map of where the brownfields are, especially if we're talking about redeveloping them. Maybe some of them should be developed to a different level restore them to floodplain, contribution as opposed to development.
Sorry, can we get those maps and then?
Yeah, we
have
can,
a better-
that's good feedback. Well, let us look into that and see if we can produce such a map.
I mean, the brownfields are not being created anymore, are they? Aren't they? Although I suppose a gas station could be considered a brownfield, but I mean, no one's allowed to create new brownfields. Aren't they all here 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago?
Well, again, yes, the targets for development opportunities in town are largely older industrial sites that are no longer industrial sites. So some are brownfields, some are not, but, it depends.
Let's get back,
but-
let's get back to number 6. I
We
think the
can
pyramid
we
map
can
for
certainly,
development
I
makes
understand
sense.
what you're asking. We can look into producing a map.
All right, sounds like there's support with the minor change to make it EG or IEG along Kings Highway. Yes?
Not along Kings Highway, just in general.
Yeah, but EG as an example, I think we're just,
Yeah.
I don't think we have to put a location of brownfields a brownfield. They only exist as defined by the federal and state,
All right.
you know.
Is everybody,
Section
it
of
seems like there's
brownfield.
consensus for the EG though. Is there
I don't
consensus
want
for
the
the?
EG.
All right,
Yes.
I heard
Okay.
consensus for the
You don't have to
EG.
say where a brownfield is. A brownfield is defined pursuant to federal law and state law. We don't have to.
With
We're not
the
defining them all, we're
Ron's
just
objection
identifying a
noted, it
specific
sounds
area.
like there is consensus.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Page 35A7, prioritize funding opportunities to advance sanitary sewer system upgrades. Objections?
No objection.
Prioritize funding. Do we know where, so this is again an issue of the sewer map, which is somewhere in here, right? Is the sewer map in this section or somewhere else?
It's later, but there's language on page 33 that talks about the existing sewer capacity, and roughly 50% of what sewer treatment plant is treating now is not actually sewage, but inflow and infiltration that needs to be taken out of the system. So that's what that number
So
7 is referring back to.
So this is the one where I think we heard from the engineering department early on, after the first draft was created around August of 23, that it could cost, was it 10 or $50 million? It was a lot of money. I don't remember the exact amount. Shouldn't that,
I don't know that we quantify it, but we have language that's on page 33 that was, that we collaborated with the director of, Public Works Director to recognize. We didn't put a number on it, but understanding that it's going to take some upgrading of the infrastructure.
and
So that,
elsewhere in this document, when they talked about funding, I think they talked about property taxes. So do we know where, this obviously would be along the existing sewer map because we're not extending sewer to the septic, which is around half the geographic area of our town, from basically Mill River to Westport, and everything else is on sewer. So if we're expanding the existing sewer capacity for sanitary sewer, that means we're expanding the development and density capacity on the east side of town. Is that really the takeaway from that?
No, we're
No,
just fixing what doesn't work now.
what we're saying is the system now is treating 50% of its current flow as not actual sewage. So for the system to work more efficiently, to take that out, there are some pipe replacements that need to happen. There's a East Trunk sewer line project that's out to bid to replace some aging infrastructure. So it's a combination of things. It's to make it more efficient. Yes, in some cases, it may expand some capacity by making it, reducing those.
It reduces the stress on the plant is what our DPW director is looking to do, as well as our wastewater treatment manager. Right now, our plant is a little stressed out because it's processing more than it should be and less efficiently than it should be. So they specifically asked us to put that in there so that we can address as a town repairs to the current system moving forward. And if there are grant opportunities to do that, whether it's through the Clean Water Act or anything else, it helps us to have that language within the plan.
except this is in the section about development. So this is to enable, I think we should be open and transparent. This is to enable more development in the areas where we have sewer, not where we have septic.
Correct. I don't think there's any mystery about that. You're correct. The opportunity sites, as I said before, that are in town are older industrial sites that are prime for reuse. That was what came out of our TOD planning exercise that's carrying forward as part of this,
Currently served by sewage.
Correct.
That is in need of repair.
And this is not just to repair to get up to where the capacity we have now. This is to repair beyond the current capacity to enable more multifamily housing, basically, I'm assuming.
Well, it's the plant has
20 minutes.
sewage treatment plant has a fixed capacity. By eliminating inflow and infiltration, it will increase the ability to take more actual sewage. So yes, part of this exercise is to identify, and again, and to go back, way back, what I've said in the past, I think many times, is every time we do public engagement with, is part of this process, and I heard many sessions of the strategic plan as well, that there's the two top things that people come up as the priority items is, number one, we need growth of the grand list to help reduce my tax bill, and number two, stop overdeveloping the town. Now those are two opposing forces in this task that we're undertaking here, is to try to find the middle ground here between recognizing that we need to recognize growth opportunities to help grow that grand list in targeted locations, not completely willy-nilly town-wide, but targeted locations to achieve objective A, while also maintaining the characteristics of the town that everybody loves, which is objective B. So yes, there are in order to achieve that, there needs to be new development. And as I said, I don't suspect that many of you, if any, have had a chance to read the document that I sent to you earlier today. But
Sustainable fair.
for the foreseeable future, economic development in Fairfield and the state of Connecticut as a whole is going to revolve around housing in some capacity. That's just the reality of the marketplace that we are in, and the demand for housing, and why we see an unprecedented level of development applications with respect to housing. So we're trying to harness that where this commission thinks it might be appropriate in a mixed-use capacity or transit-oriented development.
And I want to add environmentally sound fashion, because
Yes.
we're developing in areas that are already impermeable, served by fixed utilities, and not expanding into green areas where we'll be taking down the tree cover and propagating sprawl.
I
So-
agree with not moving to green areas, but on the other hand, it seems like we're putting intense development on steroids on the entire Kings Highway, east side of town area, and that is going to have its own repercussion. And we have no,
They're called brownfield sites. And so we're encouraging development on brownfield rather than greenfield.
well,
Can
hold
I
on.
jump in? Can we bring this back to number 7, please?
Well, but
Yes.
that's not about brownfields. That's about sewer capacity.
We're talking right now. I mean, I would think number 7, is a pretty simple, we want to prioritize this. It helps with funding opportunities and grants. So I would think this is a
Yep.
yes from me.
Number 8 now, we've gotten a lot of feedback, directly and indirectly. You all specifically, do you feel like this addresses the issues?
I'm sorry, for everyone else, page 35, A8, continue to coordinate the impact of increased housing opportunities with the BOE Facilities Planning Committee.
Yeah, I will say this. Yes, on the one hand, Kathy is right, and we are promoting development opportunities. What we're trying to do, and we understand, and where the Board of Ed we get pushback from, is they're sensitive to the pressure that brings to bear on certain schools that have capacity stresses. We understand that, and that's what this bullet point is trying to articulate, that we need to continually coordinate that impact with the Board of Ed so they can understand what's in the pipeline and what's to come, which we will do and continue to do and are doing. So we're making the statement here that we recognize that. Now, we did get a specific letter with some recommendations in the Board of Ed that is not particularly in this section, but in the community where people come together, we can talk more about that there. But this is just another bullet to just kind of balance the concern that we're hearing. Hey, there's a lot of development in this plan, but we understand we need to coordinate that with how those impacts may increase the stresses that are impacting the Board of Ed.
Yeah, okay.
Objections to this.
Can I,
Just
I
real-
have
real
a
quick,
remark
just
to make when,
Yeah, just to clarify my initial question. So we've been getting feedback on this topic. You guys specifically have been getting, this, do you feel like this addresses the issues that have been raised, or do we need to strengthen it?
No, I don't think it needs to be here. I think this is just to kind of be mindful of the opportunities that we're discussing in strategy A, that we need to be mindful of this. At the last meeting, we added in some additional language to talk about annual review with pending projects with the BOV. It was your suggestion, I believe. And the letter that we did receive earlier this month from the BOE is they're recommending some specific language that will be coming up on page 51, not necessarily in this section, that I don't expect there'd be any pushback, that I think it's helpful language that they've provided to us. And I don't want to get into a more editorial commentary, but I did provide you a document for your review, not now, with respect to this matter and my personal response to the letter that we received from the Board of Education. I shared that with you via email earlier today. I don't expect that everybody's had a chance to review that, but you have. And I'm prepared to talk about that in more depth when we get to page 51.
yeah, I didn't get a chance to read your note. I was traveling all day.
No, I don't expect that everybody had that opportunity. But I can summarize it when we get to the point where the BOE
that
is
sounds good. We
making
can have that discussion.
recommendation.
Yeah.
So on sewer.
Well, I don't know, Alexis, did you have a remark?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this.
Can Kathy go? If
Yeah,
you want to go?
I mean, I think I watched the Board of Ed meeting when they did talk about the POCD. I think they had that meeting in December, I want to say. And a few of the members, I don't want to editorialize here, but a few of them seemed surprised by some of the content of the POCD. But I just want to, maybe we just, what I'm trying to say is maybe we expand the entire Board of Education on this.
Well, I think there's opportunities to address what they've specifically asked us to include when we get to page 51.
Okay.
They actually asked us to include a section on education as well.
But I think Kathy, I think we're gonna get there.
We're not there
when
yet. Okay.
We're not there
I'm
yet.
on sewer. I'm still on sewer. So I know one of
We're
the
on section 8, recommendation 8, rather.
Yeah. So one of the statutory changes that was made, which Emmeline has pointed out to us, is we now have to have a map of sewer where the sewer is in the town, where the coverage is. And we have decided, or at least our draft has indicated, we are not going to expand that footprint. Whatever is on septic now will stay on septic, which necessarily limits development, obviously. I assume Greenfield Hill, like the village, must have sewer, or they couldn't get that level of density right there. So based on all that, where we are expanding, where we are putting this funding for sewer upgrades will further densify the whole rest of the town. So that's a concern I have, and it's a concern a lot of people have. All the 8-30Gs seem to be in that, that area. And now, I guess, do we have any control over what the sewer is going to be if we're
Commissioner Braun, we dealt with number 7, and we was a consensus on the language.
Number 7, aren't we?
No, we're on number 8.
I didn't vote on the sewer.
I thought we had a vote on sewer.
I did not vote for.
I didn't hear a vote on sewer.
Did we
I
vote,
have a-
did I miss something, Tom, or did we vote on sewer?
If we didn't, if folks are saying they didn't vote, then they didn't vote, so we can go
Well,
back to 7.
Well, let's go back to number 7, okay?
Can
I
I
mean,
ask my question?
I think we
we
need to
just-
keep moving, and
I am
I thought we
moving.
moved
That's why
on to Board of Ed, so is there consensus on the language for number 7?
No, I don't have
Yes.
a consensus. I would like to have it more detailed on advanced sewer. Where are we doing it? Where's it being advanced? And are we talking about repairing to get it to where it should be right now? Or are we talking about to enable, more HS30Gs, more apartment buildings, in that area of town more than we're doing now? Because right now we've approved thousands of units, which haven't been built yet, or hundreds of units, which haven't been built yet. We haven't even seen the impact. So by us expanding the infrastructure on half our town only, we're basically rubber stamping, put tons and tons more stuff here. That's a little bit of a concern that people have and that I have as well, that whatever, the residential development we're doing is only going to be in half the town. And maybe we shouldn't be doing
Well, a
so
lot of-
much expansion when it can only be done in half the town. I don't want to go into the green areas either, but maybe we're doing too much density expansion on half our town. That's a thought I have. And I think I'd like a little more guidance on, the sewer system upgrades. It's in here for a reason. Does it have to be in here? We have to show the map of where the sewer is.
I will redirect you back to the language on page 33. It comes directly from our Director of Public Works. The map of the sewage area is on page 79. And I will say, this has been a very long process with lots and lots of public engagement. I did not hear at any time through all of that public engagement an appetite to expand the sewer system up into Greenfield Hill, for example, to allow for greater density. I don't think there's a public appetite for such an expansion, and I don't think you're suggesting one.
No.
But by the same token, when we talk about the opportunities that we're talking about here, it's for a very, very small percentage of our town. It's 5% of our town is zoned for commercial. So we're talking about our existing commercial corridors. Now, of course, we don't have control over where 8-30G applications are made. That is true. They need to be in areas that can support sanitary sewer. That is also true. We're upcoming on a moratorium. But what we're trying to do here is to create alternative development other than 8-30G applications that helps try to address the issue that is that we understand the tension of where 8-30G is in the eastern part of town with respect to the residents that live there, for traffic, and primarily for the Board of Ed stresses that they've articulated to us. What we're trying to do here is promote alternative development strategies so folks can do something other than an 8-30G application along our existing commercial corridors on previously developed sites that put housing more equitably distributed, so it's not all concentrated in one school district or voting district. So it's spread out more geographically, equitably. And that's really what we're trying to achieve here. So when you look at a map, 90, we're not looking to change the vast majority of the percentage of the town in terms of its overall land use. We're talking about, again, targeted strategies that help distribute where those development opportunities occur. Does that mean that once a moratorium is come and gone, that 8-30G applications aren't going to pop up again? No, but all those other applications that are in the pipeline that have been authorized but yet to be built will hopefully, by the time a 4-year moratorium is near expiration, will allow us to achieve a subsequent moratorium. So we're not continually faced with those applications. But what we're trying to promote here are opportunities that give the development community something other than an 8-30G option that's in line with the goals of this plan in a very small percentage of the overall geography of the town.
So the assumption is we can't do what we want to do in this plan without getting more sewerage in there?
Well,
But that wasn't why it was brought to our attention. The department, the director of public works, it's like if you had leaky pipes in your house and you just chose not to fix them. We have leaky
Right.
pipes throughout our sewer system and we need to fix them. And so that's what they've asked us to include
It sounds to
in
me
the plan.
like whether or not we want any new development or not, the DPW is telling us that this is what we need.
yes.
And so this language would have to be in here to help us get funding to do what we need to do for existing development, whether or not we also happen to want new development.
Correct.
Right? So
Yes.
if we want funding, it sounds like we need this language in here.
That's correct.
For example, the area down by
Maybe we should insert repair.
off of Reef Road. Neighbors were complaining about the smell. That's
That was
part
that
of
was a
this.
different issue. I mean, that was a whole issue with the digester, Joe.
Yeah, that was a component of the plant that was malfunctioning due to benign neglect, not necessarily a capacity issue,
Okay.
but that would be an example of a sanitary sewer.
It's an example.
Yes.
Can we, I think we've kind of talked enough about number 7 here. Can we just, is there a consensus with this language, particularly what Tom just said and what Emmeline just said?
Can we insert necessary repairs? Because that's what the whole paragraph talked about, the fact that half of the sanitary sewer pipes are taken up with stormwater.
I
I
think we
think
let
that
the
should
Water
be-
Pollution Control Authority handle that on their own. That's their jurisdiction. I think we let them do that.
Agreed.
I'm comfortable with the language as is.
As am I. Good, good, good.
I'm going to vote too. I'm going to vote in favor. Yes.
Thank you.
I would like to insert the word repair.
There's a consensus to move it forward with the language as is. So let's just, I think we've got that. Let's move to number 8.
Back to number 8, still on page 35. Objections to this proposal, understanding that we will have another section where we'll have additional recommendations to discuss.
Instead of opportunities, I would say housing development. That's what we're talking about, housing development.
Agreed.
I agree with that,
Seems like a synonym to me, but
Well, it's the development that matters to them, not the opportunity for development. It's the development. It's the impact of
we don't,
what's-
but we don't really have control over the developments. It's just really the giving opportunities with what our zoning and regulations are and what this POCD is though. So, I mean, it's not a big deal one way or the other. I'd leave it as opportunities.
I would leave it as this. Any,
I mean, I don't understand that word as it relates to this. I'm not trying to sound obtuse, but it just seems like it's.
Let me. All right, that's a good question. Let me go back to what I was trying to articulate before. The sum of these recommendations here and in the prior chapter are to try to identify opportunities where we can promote more than you could do today, but less than what you would likely see in an 8-30G application.
Thank you. I'm fine. I'm fine with retaining the language as is.
Chair Newton, Commissioner Braun.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for me. Yeah.
Okay. Strategy B, still page 35, encourage development in existing commercial districts. Ms. Harrigan, can you refresh the commission's recommendation on if and how we handled this in the previous section where I believe we also had language along these lines?
So
What
this
page are
all
we on?
comes from
Page 35.
35.
Oh, sorry, okay, thank you. Still page 35. Sorry.
So the items in strategy B come specifically from the transit-oriented development study that we did in 2018 and 2019. And so these were all recommendations from that study, with an additional one that we added in order to promote more walkability with a maximum setback requirement from the street to allow future development within both the design commercial district and center design business district to be more closer to sidewalks. And to promote more mixed use within that district.
Yeah, I remember these recommendations. I'm fine with, I'm looking at just one right now. And the bullet points, those are fine with me.
We did have a similar discussion in the previous section and in our November meeting. Are there any objections to the sub items under strategy B, recommendation 1?
Can you clarify, Ms. Harrigan, the third bullet point where it says, on the condition that is not within 50 feet of the front or side setback? Is the intent of that you could have a ground floor residential unit as long as it's not the front of the building? Is that what that means?
Yes, yeah, so if, I think this was to promote buildings behind, right? For this 50 feet.
So we'd still have street front retail, but behind that we could have
Residential, correct.
Got it. I'm good with that.
Any objections in the room
Is
to
there a,
recommendation 1? Seeing none online?
Oh.
Any
No
objections?
objection.
For strategy, strategy B, item 1.
Strategy B, recommendation 1.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
does this include expanding the footprint down to Mill River, or
Nope.
No,
it doesn't?
Kathy, we voted on that one already.
So whatever we're doing there, whatever we're doing here goes into that expansion.
If
If and when it's
that
expanded.
is voted on.
This
And
relates
after
to the
it's
expanded footprint. Everything we do here relates to the expanded footprint.
If we so expand it, you have to expand it first. If we so decide to.
Is
I
there
don't have a problem
any
with the
reason?
third bullet. The first bullet we discussed at length at one point, eliminate the 50-foot maximum residential floor area. I'm sorry,
Correct.
wait a minute. Residential,
50%.
residential, right. So that would allow, Jim, can you just illustrate what we have now downtown versus what it could have in terms of residential versus what we're allowed to have now? Like, is there, like, I'm thinking Flipside has an apartment above it, the jewelry store has an apartment above it. What would this allow that we don't allow now? What would it look like?
What this would permit is in the design commercial district and the center design district presently, the maximum residential occupancy is 50% of the floor area of the building and no more than 2 floors of residential occupancy. What's been discussed quite a bit at length with, particularly in the TOD study and what we're seeing, there's not, and I'll go back to my statement I made earlier, for the foreseeable future, economic development is going to revolve around housing. There's not a strong market for office space for the foreseeable future. So a 4-story building, for example, that's 2 floors of commercial and 2 floors of residential, which would be the max permitted under our current zoning regulations, is not likely to occur because that second floor commercial space is not going to get built. So if we're trying to promote, again, housing opportunities within our commercial corridors that help better equitably distribute where housing, in specifically affordable housing through an inclusionary zone provision, to allow that to occur in areas that are not in the sensitive school districts in our existing commercial corridor, we're suggesting that existing 50% residential occupancy, dare I use the word barrier, be eliminated.
You don't have to use, there's many words we can use, but I hear what you're saying. So let's say,
I was kidding.
I've
I
got
know
one
you were
question
kidding.
on this
I
one.
know you were kidding. So if, let's say it was 3 stories instead of 4 stories, how many floors of commercial could you have without the 50% restriction? You could have 2 floors above retail, two residential floors above retail. If it was 3, you would have no restriction on residential, right?
Well, no, correct. We're still requiring first floor commercials. So in your example, you could have 2 stories of residential above ground story commercial. That wouldn't be permitted under the current regulations. You can only have 50% of the building be residential.
Okay. So this means if you're eliminating it, we're not replacing it with some other restriction. We're saying you can have as much residential so long as it satisfies the if it can't be on the ground floor unless it's in the back of the building type thing. Other than
Right,
that,
it
you
would,
can have
it would
as
have
much-
to,
yeah,
it
okay,
would have to meet all the other metrics of height,
Right.
parking, FAR and so forth. It's just eliminate that 50% limitation.
Commissioner Randolph.
Question. Had we considered adding the neighborhood design business district to this strategy B?
I think it was taken out in an earlier conversation.
We haven't, I think there's more sensitivity there than there is, in our Post Road, Kings Highway corridor. Applications that have introduced housing even at permittable levels under the current regulations have not been well received, let's just put it that way.
By the neighbors.
Right. There was an amendment to the neighborhood design district regulations a while back, specifically tailored for the Greenfield Hill Center, that had two existing office buildings, again, largely vacant, to allow one of them to be converted to residential. So it didn't exceed the 50-50 threshold, but the regulation amendment allowed one building to be commercial and one building to be residential. So it met the 50-50 test, but the one building by itself exceeded the 50% ratio.
Well, what do the lawyers say? Don't make the worst case the stronger reason. So
Oh,
I just look at Stratfield Market and had we not had this constraint, probably would have had a better I mean, the outcome there is okay, but I think we would have had a better outcome if we had allowed this in neighborhood design districts, because we are, back to the corner development. I think we would, by encouraging development in the and on Tunxus Hill, where our current 830G is, that's a neighborhood design business district facing Tunxus Hill. And it seems like a lot of missed opportunities.
Well, the neighborhood design district still allows 50% residential.
Right, but it's a constraint. I mean, those areas we're trying to make more pedestrian. They already are pedestrian to a certain degree.
Yep.
This would encourage development in areas where we have infrastructure. There's likely public transportation or to be public transportation. It's encouraging. Yeah.
I personally don't have any objection to what you suggest.
I like what
Yours.
Commissioner Randolph is saying. I don't know why we took it out unless there was a different reason. It was in here
So-
originally.
The suggestion is to add neighborhood design district to strategy B, recommendation 1.
I mean, that's fine with me. I seem to recall we took it out, and I think somebody said that as much. But again, it's consider language, so fine, let's put it in there.
No objection here.
Good idea. Thanks.
Okay, consensus in the room. Commissioners Harrison and Braun.
I'm good with that.
Yes, I'm good with it. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Jim, thank you for
Okay.
reiterating the earlier discussion.
Page 35, B2, reimagine Black Rock Turnpike and Kings Highway as welcoming walkable pedestrian-friendly corridors through design standards that encourage mixed-use development. Objections?
Why wouldn't that be extended to other areas, all the commercial areas, like even downtown? Why wouldn't it be included there? I was noticing,
Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean to.
Well, with all the discussion of enabling more density, more height of the downtown area, I don't think we have anything about design standards there, do we? I didn't see it.
Well, all right. So the center design district does have some very good and robust design standard, which was one of the reasons why we were considering expanding the footprint of the center design district to bring those same design standards to other areas of the post road. So my takeaway was we have some specific targeted things that already talk about the center on the post road. What this is, hey, there's Black Rock Turnpike and Kings Highway could use a little love too with respect to design criteria. So I think we've already are pretty specific on the downtown post road stuff. So that's why this doesn't include that.
So we're not putting any design standards in this POCD about the center or any area other than Black Rock Turnpike, Kings Highway. Like there's other,
I think my recollection of this conversation was by keeping it like this, we don't have to make a determination in this POCD that we do this. This could happen by nature of some of the changes we discussed to the design commercial district, or perhaps it gets changed to a different district, but we don't have to specify that now.
Correct. But again, the discussion around downtown has largely been around whether or not there should be some expansion of the footprint of the center design district geography. What comes with that is an existing set of fairly robust design criteria that does not currently apply to Black Rock Turnpike or Kings Highway.
you mean in our current regulations?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe they need to be relooked at anyway. I mean, it seems to me like any area we should have design standards upgraded or updated. So it's like the neighborhood design business districts, shouldn't they also have the
The
design?
neighborhood design district and the center design district are subject to those specific design criteria in our current regulations.
Tell you, I'd like to put some in the Commerce Drive area.
And this suggestion is to basically expand those concepts into these other neighborhoods.
Correct.
Yep.
If they don't exist.
Right.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I think we're on the same page on this one, right?
Especially because this is a new edit. Or newer.
Yeah, again, it's red. It came out of discussions that we had from the previous draft.
So,
Commissioner Braun, are you?
I would
good
like
with-
to expand it to any neighborhood design district or any mixed use area. I mean,
all right,
what
is
other-
anybody, I mean,
What
the
other
thought
what
was that they already exist. It is, so after hearing Commissioner Braun's note I mean, I'm comfortable with the language as is. Anybody similar?
The only specific, just to address Commissioner Braun's point is perhaps Tungus Hill. We added Tungus Hill in here.
Yes, we have some discussion in Tungus Hill as to whether or not there should change, whether some of what's now neighborhood design district shouldn't be converted to design commercial district, but
even all Tungus Hill all the way down.
yeah, I mean, if you want it more
Yeah.
broadly defined.
But to Commissioner Braun's point, limiting it to these areas, maybe we should add, I mean, Tungus Hill comes to mind. Kathy, is there anything else that,
well, is Tungus
Comes
still
to-
part of Kings Highway? Are they considered separate areas? It's not really.
I don't know. They're separate.
I guess that depends on,
Black Rock.
define that,
Yeah.
but
I think if you were doing a study, you would define it at that time and you could include it.
There you go.
I don't think it's an issue.
again, I think this speaks to a kind of along the line of what Emmeline has said before. It's kind of, hey, this is a task that is going to be more largely taken up when you look at the regulation rewrite.
And we'll need to do a planning study to address this specifically, right?
It is a
Well,
guidance.
again, through revision of the zoning regulations, including potentially more robust design standards, the geography to which those standards should apply.
Right.
And if we have to do a planning study, it may not be the scope of this first set of zoning regulations. This might have to be planning dollars that we pursue later if this is a more encompassing
Right.
scope of work.
So we'll get to it when we get there.
When we have the funding and the time.
I don't have a problem the way it's written. I just think it should be broader based, but I don't really have a problem with having design standards extended there.
Okay. Commissioner Harrison, you said you were good with it also?
Yes, I'm in alignment. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, page 35, B3, reexamine permitted uses in DCD and CD. BD to modernize the list of permitted uses and make the code easier to use. Objections?
What does that mean?
No.
What does that mean exactly?
I think that's a movement towards what we have already kind of done, that is that in the regulation reorganization, and Emmeline can jump in and correct
I don't
me
see
where I'm
it.
wrong, it's through more, the use of tables and being more descriptive and more clear as to the distinction between the districts and how we define the uses permitted therein.
We're changing the uses that are allowed?
No, I think this was more of just like a housekeeping item
What does that mean?
for reorganizing the zoning regulations.
it says re-examine the permitted uses, basically all the commercial districts, including any commercial district, to modernize the list of permitted uses and make the code easier to use. Modernize the list of permitted uses. Does that mean adding to the list of uses? I don't.
It could be, but again, there's a draft floating out there that we haven't got to yet, and I don't want to rehash that discussion, but that would, and when we get to that, part of that is going to be, are we keeping the uses as they're defined in each of these districts the same? Should some uses be better defined? And should some uses that are currently not permitted in some of those districts be considered?
Then we should if we're saying the code, we're talking about our zoning regulations, right?
Yes.
Maybe we could use that word so it's clear what we're talking about. We're talking about amending our zoning regulations to update the nomenclature of what we consider an existing list of uses. We're not talking about expanding the uses. We're talking about giving better examples, like with, for modern types of activities that didn't exist 30 years ago. Is that what we're saying? We're not talking about expanding uses.
Kathy, an example of this is like old zoning codes used to have stables as a focus.
I'm
and
sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Old zoning codes used to have things like stables, blacksmith
Staples?
shops, tanneries. Yeah, so we're just trying to update it to, something else.
Not getting rid of our tanneries, are we?
I mean,
Crypto.
Fat rendering.
is part, well, I have a question. Is part of the reformatting project of our zoning regulations, which we have received one draft of so far, is part of that? Is this in that already or no? Like, that's kind of a separate project?
Well, it is and it isn't. We're trying to rather than having a list of narrative uses, is a single list with the various zones where you can, you're better at explaining this than I am, visually, rather than having to lead the list. All right, if I've got a use like a medical office, and then you look across in a matrix of the zones as to where it's permitted and where it's not. So it's easier to use rather than having to read 3 different sections of the regulations to see where that use.
So that's really just reformatting our regulations so you can see what does allow a medical office, a home office or something. Right?
Yes.
So this is not expanding the permitted uses or re-examining them. It's reformatting our regulations so we could find things better. I always think the regulations needed reformatting so you could not just look at one zone, but look at one use and see where it's capable of being done, right? Is that
Yes.
one thing we did in our updated regulations?
Yes.
So it's not so much modernized, it's reformatted so it's easier to use those regulations. We're not expanding the list of uses capable of being done in the commercial district, right?
Well, that's going to be up to the commission. I mean, every time you examine a list of permitted uses, it's going to beg the conversation of whether this list should remain as is or whether changes should be made. But that's a conversation that will
It's not
come in the future.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
not-
have an
it's not
objection to
done
this.
now.
It just needs to be wordsmithed. It is not clear. It's doing 2 things. It's modernizing the code so you can better figure out what you can currently do in any area without going to that zone in the regulations. You can go to the use, right, in the regulations and figure out where you can do it. Like if you want to do a photography store, where can you do it? Can you do it in a home office? Can you do it here? Can you do it there? But so this number 3 is doing 2 things, right? It's updating and reformatting our regulations so you can use them more easily with what exists now, but it's also asking us to re-examine what we allow to do in any commercial district. Maybe we want to add things.
Right.
Yes, that's what the language says.
Can we put this to a vote and move on, guys?
Well, I'd like to reword it so it's clearer. Maybe you can, it's not a.
Well,
big-
hold on. Let's see if there's a I mean, I think it's clear enough, but let me see. Does the commission like the language as is?
What would the recommended change be?
I
Real
would
quick.
say,
We'll talk about it when we get to the zoning regulations.
No, she's asking what Kathy would want.
Kathy,
right
can you just, Kathy, can you just answer my question? What change would you
would say-
want to put in there?
Consider
Go ahead, Commissioner.
the permitted uses in those commercial districts and modernize the regulations to make them more usable when exploring uses are permitted in each zone. So that might be longer, but that spells it out better to me. They were doing two things in this item. We're considering the possibility of expanding the uses or modernizing them. We're also reformatting the zoning regulations to enable a more efficient ability to figure out what zones you can do your use in.
Kathy, could you maybe send your suggestions
it.
to Emmeline and then?
That's fine. I don't want to belabor it now, but that's, I don't,
Be
agree-
okay,
I don't disagree with what we're trying to do. I just don't think it's clear.
Understood. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Braun. You'll send those
Yeah,
by
I'll
email?
send it.
And
Thank
can you
you.
copy all of us on there so we can make sure
I'll
we
do
have
that,
it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Page 35B for explore amending the parking requirements, continuing on page 36 for all
Commissioner
retail
Braun,
uses.
send them, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong. We should be sending things to you to distribute, not to everybody, right?
Well, I just want to
Yeah,
make sure we
that's-
get them.
Well, I
Yes,
think
that's
never gonna
probably
be
best,
printed
and
out and
then
sent out.
to get it to me, and then I'll forward it to everybody.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Pages 35 and 36, B4, explore amending the parking requirements for all retail uses, including restaurants, to 4 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet, and office parking to 3 spaces for every 1,000 square feet. Objections?
What is the current?
How does that change our current capacity requirements?
Office parking is 4 per thousand?
Right. To answer Steve's question, the current retail is by and large 5 spaces per thousand rather than 4, with the exception of the center design district. It's 1 for the first 1,500 square feet and then 1 for 2, then 4 per thousand thereafter. Office space is 4 per thousand. So what this is suggesting, and what we've already done in the Commerce Drive Design District, is reduce that to 3 per thousand versus 4 per thousand.
I've been perhaps reading too much on parking minimums lately. And, it shows you what a fascinating guy I am. But I am a believer in the free market. And I am a believer that ITE, and I think ITE is a very solid organization currently, but they have specifically said they failed for 25, 30 years. And so I think that in order to.
Requiring too much parking.
By requiring too much parking. And I think that we will, sorry, thank you for clarifying that. And I think that by continuing to specify these requirements, they'll eliminate the possibility of building some of the buildings that we love in this town, like the community theater, which Jim often brings up. And so I think within the Center Design Business District, I propose that we eliminate all parking requirements or explore eliminating parking requirements within, I think it should be within the Center Design District, Neighborhood Design Business District, and the Design Commercial District.
And are you proposing that be added as an additional recommendation to explore or to modify the current?
Open to discussion, but I look at Bob's, drive past there every day, and it's just a colossal waste of space. I still call it the Kohl's site where the tile store is colossal. And we talk about growing the grand list logically and in an environmentally sustainable fashion. We're never going to have more impermeable surface than we have now on those 2 sites.
Yeah.
We'll probably have less if we redevelop it. So I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah, about something like explore amending or eliminating the parking requirements for all. Explore amending
eliminating and reducing parking requirements for all retail uses.
Are you and I'm sorry, Commissioner Randolph, would your suggestion limited to retail uses or for any uses?
Well, I think would be in districts rather than use. Because there's certain, I mean, you look at older pre-war buildings and they had no parking. New York City has no parking, and as, you know, everyone loves to complain about Metro North, but it's still one of the reasons people move here. And so if you were to put residential in close proximity to public transportation, the developer could be a better judge of how much parking they needed, and the banks who underwrite the loan would be the determinant of how much parking they needed, rather than us, you know, grabbing numbers out of the air, you know, at, you know, 8:30 at night.
I would think just maybe just have explore amending the parking requirements and just leave it at that. I mean, I would think.
No, but
amending-
I'd like to be more
Go ahead.
specific and suggest eliminating parking minimums.
All
Because
right, if you
that's
want
what
to
we would
add,
do.
I mean, I would, then fine. I mean, but I would think exploring, amending, reducing, or eliminating parking requirements would be sufficient to kind of hit everything.
Yeah, but just to be clear, to use the language that's recognized by architects, planners, and developers, we should say explore eliminating parking minimums, because that's the language of the industry. So I'm supportive.
Well, if I can make a suggestion, I hear what you're saying. It's just to just leave the language the way it is, but perhaps add another sentence.
Yes.
When undertaking this examination, the commission could even consider eliminating minimum parking standards.
That would work.
I have a question about that.
Commissioner Bronco.
I'm looking in the actual verbiage that the only section that talks about parking is on page 33. It's a very short paragraph. So that's the justification for this, which is there's higher parking requirements for dining compared to office and retail, which discourages, you know, an investment and growth because it complicates conversion, and there's excessive amounts of off-street parking. That was discussed in the TOD study, but the TOD study was so long ago, and I personally do not understand how you could lessen the parking requirements and have those businesses function. People are this is one reason we voted down 15 Uncle Road, because there was constantly cars parked on Sanford Street all the time. Our town engineer agreed you can use parked cars in your sightline analysis because there's always cars parked there. So where are they going to go? How are they going to open our restaurants with no parking requirement or a much reduced parking requirement from what we have now? I don't understand how that works.
So eliminating a parking requirement means that, doesn't mean you need no parking. It means that, so you look at the community theater. Are there any parking spaces? There's 0 parking spaces for the community theater. We could not build that building today. Parking determines the way our downtown is configured. So you look at the Rite Aid, it's the Rite Aid, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, you look at the Rite Aid.
Mhm.
What a mistake. Huge mistake, because we had a parking minimum there. So I'm suggesting that in the commercial districts, we don't make the same mistake we made with Rite Aid or Bob's. So
Can I make a suggestion that we don't talk about specifically what this study is going to include, but assume that we are going to study this in order to determine whether or not to move forward with this recommendation?
I'm just using
So this is-
examples.
Right. So, I mean, because part of this conversation should be as well, how many restaurants throughout Fairfield have been issued parking variances? The list is extremely long, and they still operate and function, and people find parking, and our downtown is flourishing. So, you know, I think that'll be part of the discussion, but we don't need to get into the weeds today on what that's all going to include, because it will include all those things. This is just to say, we will look at this.
Well, then we should
Yeah,
have specific detail in there if we're
I
just
think the
looking at
whole
it.
Design of it was poor to begin with. I would have put it up closer to the street, that whole strip, and put the parking in the back.
I think that's Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's addressed by some of the other recommendations that we have in here, including the maximum setbacks and other things, but so I think it sounds like to do what you're suggesting, but also what Ms. Harrigan is saying, I guess we need to take out the specificity on the reduction of 4 spaces for every 1,000 and 3 for every 1,000, and just have something more general about exploring amending the parking requirements.
I think Jim's recommendation was to add a sentence at the end that said the commission may also consider eliminating parking minimums. I believe that those initial, so I will say that
I think you're saying something different. Okay, so that's.
I think this came to us from our Economic Development Department and our Economic Development Commission in trying to, I think they probably would have proposed your sentence, but I think they were meeting us halfway in terms of saying, well, how about this? So I don't know that, you know.
I think you're going to see, I know, for example, that Fairfield Senior Advocates have been looking at some of those examples that you just gave of large parking fields that are underutilized. And hey, is there an opportunity to recapture some of that to allow some sort of other additional development to take place? Because obviously there's certain economies of scale when you get to a certain magnitude. When you have a 1,000 square feet of store and a handful of parking spaces, you don't achieve those economies of scale when you get to 50,000 square feet of store, and then you've got hundreds and hundreds of parking spaces. There's opportunities to consider reductions. So the benchmarks that are put here were because we've already, at least not with respect to restaurants, we haven't done that yet. But reducing the 4 per 1,000 to 3 and 5 per 1,000 to 4 has already been implemented in the Commerce Drive District. But again, I agree with the example that Emmeline gave. Restaurants are in there because of the magnitude or the sheer number, roster of variances that have been granted for that. And typically, when you have a section of your regulation that's consistently and continually granted a variance, it kind of speaks to the fact that perhaps we should re-examine that regulation rather than continuing going down the variance route.
Okay, so what's been suggested is to adjust the language on recommendation B4 to add a sentence suggesting that we can consider eliminating parking minimums. Objections to this recommendation with that change.
But that keeps all the same specifics in there. I thought we discussed taking out specifics.
I think well, again, I think the idea is we're talking about undertaking this examination, and then when you get into it, then all of those issues will be on the table for your consideration.
But you're, okay, so the average person that frequents our restaurants complains about parking all the time. And I do have a question for Commissioner Randolph on Rite Aid and something else. How would we have a pharmacy of Rite Aid size without any parking? We have handicapped people that go there all day long. How do they get, how do you have a large pharmacy? Maybe
to specifically address the question of handicap, I'm an architect still. There's probably a ratio. There's probably a ratio of 3 handicap spaces for that building, maybe 2. So handicap specifically could be addressed, but
Commissioner Delgado.
Yeah, Commissioner Delgado.
I was just thinking that what it can do also, it gives us an out, right? We can look at the examples that are given here are already in practice. And maybe that could be a short-term goal to address it that way. And then also look at the eventual elimination or further reduction down the line. So that
Can
way.
I just say something too?
Please, Commissioner Harrison.
Sorry. No, I would just offer something to Commissioner Braun. We have places in town where there really isn't parking available. I think of the community theater. I think of Old Post Tavern and other places, or El Pilcano. They're all flourishing and there is no real parking lot available. So I think it is time that we look at relaxing our parking restrictions. Many towns across Connecticut, across the U.S. are doing that, and I think we should as well. So I'm definitely in favor of it.
Thank you.
So let's go back to what Tom
Well,
had said.
that would
There
be,
was
well, I think that would, let me just finish, that would be part of this, that would be part
Sure.
of the study.
Well,
Maybe-
they-
Correct.
Well, Tom had suggested, Tom had put forth language. So what do people think on that language? Keeping it as is, and then what was adding what language?
Yeah, the added language would be an additional sentences. When undertaking a parking study, the commission could also consider the potential of eliminating minimum parking standards.
I
What
think,
is, what does the commission think on that?
I think the parking study should be at the top of this, of item 4, to say, conduct a parking study to explore the possibility of amending the parking requirements. And we don't have to have all those specifics just to reduce it, you know? I think the study should be up top. You can't do anything without the study.
Kathy, I think Commissioner Delgado made a good suggestion. He said that that might be a stepping stone to get to another place. So by including it, I think Mr. Went has encouraged us to include it, and he deals with the stuff, you know, on the front lines every day. So Commissioner Went, if you're suggesting that we keep that in there, I defer to your.
Well, I agree. I think Jonathan made an excellent suggestion that the language as is could be viewed as more of a nearer term consideration, and a more longer term view would be to conduct a study to dig a little deeper.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put any definitive language in there. I would just like to, do the study and see where that goes and leads us.
We have
So-
two suggestions then. It's kind of what Commissioner Braun said and what was outlined by Commissioner Corsillo with Jim, the last sentence for Jim. So what does the commission think? I'm fine with what Tom and Jim had proposed.
I think we have to have a study to consider doing anything with parking.
Okay, I'm just asking what language you prefer right
I
now.
would say what I said a second ago.
I understand, yes. I figured you, I understand. I'm not trying to be dismissive. I understand you put forth some suggestion. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what everybody else is thinking.
Oh, you already heard what I said. Okay.
I did.
Kathy, you just want to repeat it just so I make sure everybody knows it.
Conduct a parking study in the center district to consider to explore amending the parking requirements to reduce it for retail uses and restaurants and the possibility of eliminating them. But I mean, it's the study that has to come front, and I would not put specifics in there. That's for a later date.
Thoughts with either the two suggestions?
Since this was my proposal, I think putting the stepping stone specifics and keeping them in there and then adding the consideration of eliminating parking minimums would be more specific and actionable. We would have to do a study for either. So, but again, I defer to Mr. Went because he's dealing with the specifics of this all the time, every day on the language.
Well, I don't think
Well,
you
in order-
let's have the study to discuss eliminating all parking.
Hold on. Jeff, are you suggesting a third, or are you more in line with what Tom and Jim have suggested?
I'm in line with what Tom and Jim is saying. Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? I mean, Tom, I assume you're in line with Tom, yours, and Jim.
Yes, it was really Commissioner Randolph's idea, but happy to.
I'm sorry. Whomever it was.
Yes, I lean toward that.
Also, I'm in line with
Can
it.
we just repeat it, guys?
And
Can
I
we just
think
repeat
word
things? Just
Or would include the potential for study. It doesn't
I
have
can't
to
hear
be
what
a
you're saying.
specific requisite.
Steve, get a little closer to the microphone and re-say what you said, please.
Yeah, I said I concur with the Randolph and Jim Wentz proposal. And I think the use of the word explore leaves, encompasses a potential study. But I don't think we need to make a study a prerequisite to amending our parking regulations or even the interim step.
Well,
All right. I think there's
saying
consensus
that there
then.
would be isn't everyone's interpretation that there would be a study done?
that's how
Well,
I'm.
again, we're talking about a process that would amend the regulations. So it ultimately is up to the commission what information you are going to demand or think is necessary to justify any such proposition.
Don't we have in the housing section something about doing a parking study of the whole downtown area? I mean, or a traffic and parking study? Is that already in this document?
Number 5.
Well, if it is, we should refer to that like we have with other matters relating to the housing chapter.
I don't believe there's anything about a comprehensive traffic
I thought
study.
we put it in there for the post road before we talk about expanding.
Just practically speaking, you couldn't do a comprehensive traffic study without specific projects. So it would be infeasible.
Without what?
Specific projects. Like you couldn't.
What we talked about last time is the overall volume of the road, and I referred you to the study that the state DOT, since the state highway, has done with respect to the capacity on the post road as it relates to their proposal to move forward with a road diet on certain section of proposed post road, because it is their opinion based on existing volumes in conceivably projected near-term volumes that there are more lanes than currently necessary to move that traffic. Therefore, they are suggesting a road diet. That's as comprehensive a review as you can get in terms of the state of Connecticut viewing the overall capacity of the road with sufficient in fewer lanes than there are there today.
All right. So, I mean, just bringing this back to number 4 again, I think I heard consensus for Jeff and Jim, keeping the language plus that additional sentence.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't see
Recommendation.
do the
Go
traffic.
ahead. I'm sorry,
You go first.
Commissioner Braun.
Oh. I was
No,
gonna
I
say,
think we're going on to number 5. Go ahead. Sorry.
why can't we insert the traffic study or the parking study up front? It seems to make sense before we make wholesale changes to our parking requirements.
Again, I would suggest to you that this is a suggestion for potential regulation amendment, and when it comes time to review that regulation amendment, whatever study you deem necessary to support whatever conclusions you're looking to draw will be done at that time. And that will be up to the commission, not necessarily need to be specified in this document.
Then the language should be softened to remove the specifics.
I think we have a consensus on it, so let's move forward.
I don't
Okay.
think we voted, did we?
I think
I'm
I don't
getting a
know.
little confused.
it's okay.
Is someone
I
tracking
mean,
our votes?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't vote.
Commissioner Harrison, were you a no vote on that or a yes vote? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I mean, I think I had made a suggestion about the language, about just not, I mean, I just want to kind of keep it. Right now, the recommendation on the table is to explore among the parking requirements for all retail uses, including restaurants, and then there's the example. But what is actually on the floor for a vote? Did Jeff?
Commissioner, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I think you were answering my
Commissioner
question.
Randolph's suggestion, which was the existing language and then added on to the end of that as something to the effect of as part of this, the commission may choose to explore eliminating parking requirements.
Why
Okay,
add
Madam
that at
Mayor.
all?
I don't think we're quite there yet. Personally, I'm not sure if I am. I think we should definitely be loosening things, but I don't know why we want to go that far yet. Is there a reason why?
We're exploring the elimination of parking minimums. So we can, it can enable as of right, a lot of the uses that right now are granted variances and reconstruct or recreate some of the buildings that we like downtown, such as the community theater.
But you're actually talking about adding more density throughout the entire downtown area and at the same time reducing parking requirements. So what we have now is going to be more people.
The suggestion is just to explore
Yeah.
eliminating.
There, like I said, geeking out on this subject, there's a lot of explanations that would take. Well, I can give you a book on it right now, which is really good.
If you have a
Great.
link to a
No, and
source,
Jeff,
I would love to
Jeff,
have
I
it.
think I know I'm reading about it myself, so I think we're all trying to be students of this.
Yep.
Um,
But
and I
I,
appreciate
you know,
that,
if we're
what you're saying.
exploring. We're
Yeah.
exploring, we're not committing to it, but we're committing to explore.
But exploring means you do a study. We're not experts on parking, you know, we should just,
Correct.
it seems like everything we talk about, we're expanding and sort of greasing the wheels of more density, more height, more development everywhere. And then we're saying
Everywhere.
it'll be fine because look where we are now. But where we are now, we're already developing and expanding and adding density. So you're saying, well, the community theater couldn't be built, but you're adding so much more by doing this at the same time reducing parking requirements. So it's not going to be the status quo. It's going to be more with less parking. That's my concern by putting specifics in here like this.
Or the commission can decide in that exploration not to do that, though.
Well, well, we've talked about, we're going to be,
I mean, again, these are recommendations. They do not necessarily lead to what actual language in the regulations are. They're
They just don't have to be
examples, they're
yeah.
guidance, they're nothing more than that. So, you know, I think that needs to be said because it's not like if you put that in there, it's going to happen.
You could just say consider reducing without putting the details in. That's what I recommend.
I mean, listen, there's a time for specificity and there's time for not. I mean, we're having a balance. We've gone back and forth on it, and we've said I think everybody's been differing opinions on whether it should be specific or broad with different
It's
topics.
just not needed in a visionary planning document. It doesn't need to be there.
It can be.
I think
Right, let's-
Commissioner Randolph has a suggestion that's on the table. I think in the room, the consensus to move forward. Commissioner Braun, are you a no on that?
Are we voting now? I'm a no.
Yes. Yes, okay, thank you. And Commissioner Harrison, I'm sorry, I do not recall if you,
That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to vote yes.
okay. And
Yes, you may.
Chair Noonan. Okay, thank you. Page 36B5, explore expanded shared parking opportunities to reduce the amount of land dedicated to surface parking. Objections?
No
I just have a
objection.
question.
Commissioner Randolph.
Just a question on this one. So could you give us any background on this one?
Do you
mind if I
speak to that?
No, go ahead.
So, this has come up a couple of different times with multi-tenant properties. So where you have shopping plazas. And there are currently existing regulations that allow us to look at shared parking scenarios. Those are, I think, continually tested, and we probably need to revise our regulations in a way where, so for example, in prior places where I've worked, where you look at a plaza, you may say, okay, you can have an interchangeable parking requirement with a cap out on the amount of sit-down restaurant that you permit, for example, so that not every single storefront is restaurant, which is generally highest intensity user in very specific windows. But you can get a little bit more elaborate in the description of how you perceive the, I think, maximum shared parking arrangement. And I don't want to get into details now because I think that's something that we can discuss in more detail, but this is just to add it to that parking study where we know that right now our regulations are not addressing all needs, and we need to figure out how to get there better, especially with these multi-tenant shopping plazas.
Has there been any consideration to do a master parking plan?
Well, that goes, let me just expand on what Emmeline said in the alternative, an additional opportunity. For example, the Rite Aid scenario that you said, if you're in agreement that that site has more parking than it needs, and the code were reduced to say, okay, you'd only need, let's just say there's 150 parking spaces there. And we said with the revision to the code, they'd really only need 100, but they have 150. You can say, okay, well, now there's a surplus of 50 that maybe the adjoining restaurant use can tap into and say, hey, I'd like to have a bigger dining room, and I'm going to use some of those 50 additional spaces that are next door, and I've got an agreement with the landlord, and I'm going to pay rent to allow him to allow those spaces to be used for my use. So it allows sharing of an existing resource if we agree, if there's agreement that a certain site has more parking than it needs, then they can then have adjoining users or users within a specific radius count some of those spaces towards their minimum requirements. So you're not reproducing new parking spaces, you're allowing new users to use what we determine to be an excess.
I totally agree with the concept. And I guess my question is, can we expand this to say, look at, right now our parking is balkanized beyond belief. I mean, I never park in a place where I'm ever going to.
Yeah, but you can't do that as a lot of people do. So you can't, like, just because you want to bike everywhere doesn't mean.
No, but I'm suggesting that we perhaps look at the town comprehensively and see if we can negotiate world parking peace in order to really reallocate a lot of the misallocation.
Yeah, I think that's what this is.
Okay.
I think it's trying to correct it.
This would allow for an individual approval to share parking. I'm suggesting we go a little further and look at the town comprehensively and,
No, I only use that as an example. I mean, I don't think this language limits it.
Good.
to that.
Okay.
It just says explore opportunities to allow, broader sharing of parking.
So does this, for example, encompass if the town wanted to create more municipal parking in lieu of having some, maybe as an accompaniment, that could be part of this?
Exactly. It is. And I will tell you that you may or may not recall or have knowledge of when the Fairfield department store was redeveloped to the center that it is now, the town entered into a contract with that developer to oversupply parking because of the downtown demand. So there was a 10-year period in which the town leased, I don't remember the number, at least 35 parking spaces were created in excess of what our regulations demanded for the benefit of the town in general as a supply of parking. And then over time, once that expired, certain other uses could happen in their building that drew down on those spaces. But that's just another example.
Yeah,
We're not trying to limit the possibilities here. We're just talking about, hey, I agree, and parking needs to be viewed more globally than site specific.
Exactly. And I'm just wondering if we couldn't, make the language address the broader set of issues. I'll leave it up to you guys, but for example, street parking, it's free. So, especially all the negative ramifications of street parking being free. It causes people to drive around, causes more traffic. It doesn't encourage people to move in the other spot. But if we could somehow take on a more comprehensive view, because I think there is plenty of parking in downtown Fairfield. It's just misallocated.
Yeah, I will tell you, going back 24 years to the 2000 and in discussing that topic, and what you're saying is actually a recommendation in that plan. Look at parking more comprehensively. But if you put 100 people in a room and ask them the question, is there enough parking downtown? I think the votes would be almost equally split that yes, there are versus no, there is not. And it's just a matter of preference or perception or whatever it may be. But I think there is not, it's probably a 50-50 proposition that people would agree with. And what I personally do, and I agree with what you're putting forth, that there's an ample supply of parking down there. Others may disagree, and others others do disagree.
I know, but I think we can all agree there's a misallocation of parking in Fairfield in general. When I go to Black Rock Turnpike, for example, it's the same problem. So between every parking lot is separated by a barrier.
Right. We've taken steps over the years to help reduce that by allowing landlords to interconnect their parking lots and take credit for parking spaces that are accommodated. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe there needs to be an incentive other than not losing credit for those spaces. Maybe you get credit for X number.
Well, you've been thinking about this for longer than anybody. So I'm just wondering if this language might be broadened to include some of those ideas that, you're hinting at. So,
Well, I think it being as broad as it is, it can include just about anything you want to consider.
right, but, after you go and we're not.
Well,
elected-
Commissioner Randolph,
elected
can I
anymore.
suggest something? Can I suggest something, Commissioner Randolph? If you have some suggested language, maybe you can send it
I'm
to
gonna defer to
Jim
Jim.
tomorrow, because
Go ahead. We can move on, but I'm just deferring to Jim to say if you want to add to this language, I would encourage you to. So.
I think this is one area where we do need specifics, because this is something that does not take away, this only enhances. And I totally agree with Commissioner Randolph that we should have something about incentivizing. And also, does this relate to just new development or existing development? It doesn't really say.
Well, again, it depends on how you frame it. If you want to create an incentive, for example, to interconnect parking lots, so somebody doesn't have to go out onto the public street to get from one parking lot to the other. Right now, we have a provision for that, which is, it's basically reduces the penalty for the spaces you would otherwise lose. But if you think an enhancement or an incentive could be an opportunity, I would include that within the sphere of opportunities that would be encompassed in the language as it's profitable.
So when we talk about the Bob's parking lot or the Rite Aid parking lot downtown, would this encompass those existing businesses? And maybe we should specify that this could relate, this would cover both existing parking lots. In other words, somebody has to reach out to them and say, will you do this, right?
Well, again, I think it kind of is dependent on what happens in bullet point number 4 and whether there's going to be a reduction in the overall count that create more of such a surplus, and then what can you do with that additional parking? Is the landlord then?
Well, number 4 will reduce overall parking requirement.
Right, but what I'm saying is if I own the Bob's Center and all of those parking spaces were required to be there, and we later agree that you didn't really need to have all those parking spaces, so we're going to reduce the minimum requirement, that is going to then create a surplus of parking for them. So say the regulations would require them to have 300 parking spaces, which they have. You change the regulations, now they only need 200 parking spaces. All right, what do we do with those existing 100 parking spaces that they're not required to have anymore? Does that create an opportunity for that property owner to do something more to activate, more, potential square footage or more uses that can use those 100 spaces? Or could they lease spaces to an adjoiner to allow that adjoiner to do more? We already allow adjacent parking lots to be shared, parking count, but the question is, hey, there's a lot of things you can consider in that metric that I don't know that you need to get super specific about if you're just talking about the idea of looking at parking more globally than site specifically.
That's very interesting. Is there a 1-for-1 offset with the credit we give somebody if they have shared parking, like 1-for-1, they can reduce what they need to provide if they share one space with the neighboring?
Yeah, I mean, it's at your discretion, but I think the best example of that has been implemented is the joint access that exists between Home Depot and Whole Foods when you come off of Grassmere Avenue. They were originally proposing their own driveway, and the commission said, no, we don't want another driveway. Combine your driveway. That's going to reduce the footprint of stuff you have to build. And it reduced Home Depot's parking count and reduced a little bit of Whole Foods parking count. And the commission said, that makes sense. We accept the number of parking spaces that Home Depot is giving up to create that shared access for your project. So yeah, it's designed to be a one-to-one, but when you get a project of that magnitude, you've got a little bit of discretion.
And then how would we handle like a Rite Aid or a Bob's the way it is now if they're not sharing? You're saying that by doing the other one, it would lead to people saying, oh, I can make money off my parking lot by sharing it.
Or they could,
See you, Commissioner Harrison.
they could expand right now, Bob's, believe it or not, is at their limit of what our current regulations require. If they want to put another restaurant in there, for example, if we relax the parking regulations, it goes, oh, you've got plenty of parking there, go ahead and add more restaurant space within your space. If, if the toy store goes out and somebody wants to put another restaurant in there, they wouldn't then need a variance to do that.
Okay, that's interesting.
Commissioner Harrison, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to offer another thing just to think about is that while we may be really open to having or lifting restrictions on parking, we may also want to add, and I know this may seem silly, but we want to make, I think, Fairfield a community that's friendly towards our senior citizens. I think we need more handicap parking because I think there are minimums on that. And I think if we want to enhance the lives of seniors, we may want to think about also just adding more requirements for handicapped. Could we do that?
Well, that's an interesting question. Right now, the requirements for handicap accessibility and handicap parking live in the building code, which is not regulated by this commission.
Okay.
There's a minimum threshold you need. It's typically one parking space for every 25 parking spaces in a complex. And once you get to a certain number, you don't need to continually do that. But if you've got a 50-car parking lot, you need at least 2 of those spaces to be handicap accessible, for example. But those, I understand, but I don't, it would be my opinion that that's outside the purview of the
Outside our
commission.
purview. Okay.
Those requirements live in the building code.
Okay.
Are we allowed?
So I've gone to other communities, especially obviously in Florida, where they have tons of handicap, obviously to make sure to enable, their
Yep.
population has adequate parking, but just
Yep.
something to think about for the future.
Yep,
Can
that
we
would
bring
make
this
sense.
back to hold on, can we bring this back to number 5, please? What is people's thoughts on this? Are there objections to number 5?
I would like to hear if Commissioner Randolph is going to make the language more incentivized or stronger. I would like to do that because I think this is a really great, it doesn't hurt anyone. It only helps everyone.
Well, I think he said he was going to submit it. So right now we kind of have to work with what we have here. So
I just
I'm
wanted to.
in favor
Yeah,
of it.
what I'm suggesting is this language doesn't constrain you or limit you in any way when you want to consider what quote unquote opportunities you want to consider to incentivize shared or reduced parking.
understood. So again, is there consensus?
I'm good with that. So, yep.
All right.
Everyone
Jeff says
here
he's
is
good with
good.
it. Are we all good with it?
Everyone in the room is good.
Okay. Alexis?
Yeah.
I don't
Yes.
know. Okay, I just
Yes.
didn't know if you're one way or the
Yep.
other.
Thank you.
Commissioner Braun, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay, thank you.
He
Page
puts the language
36.
in the detail backup also. There's nothing in there about there.
What?
Okay.
I mean,
The paragraph doesn't explain any of this. The detailed paragraph in the narrative section. This is only in the strategy section, but
yeah.
like we should have language that explains why we're doing the strategy.
Well,
Understood.
let's go to number 6.
Okay. B6, review existing zoning map to reduce residential and commercial split zone properties.
This is really just a housekeeping item. There's, right now, when you have zoning districts that are defined, it's a certain distance off of the street. And sometimes that unfortunately bisects a property where you might have 3/4 of a property that are in one zone and then the last third of the property that's in a different zone.
Yep.
Sometimes 2 commercial districts, sometimes a commercial and a residential district. And it would just make sense to snap these to actual property boundaries instead of having all the split zones. So this has been something that Mark Barnhart from the Economic Development Department and I have discussed over many years to try to clean this up.
Everyone good with this?
We add industrial to that?
I have a question about implementation. So presumably we would then look at the zoning map and somebody would list a number of parcels of addresses that are split into 2 different zones. And this commission,
Right, it would all have to come before this commission. So
and
this
this
isn't
Zone
something that
change.
we would do at a staff level. Any change to the zoning map has to come before you for a vote.
So we would then have a public hearing and notify, because it relates to basically one parcel of land or individual addresses, that would be then subject to the 500-foot rule, so the public could come out. Somebody might not want this, for example, I don't know who, but maybe they wouldn't want it. This would be subject to that whole process of changing a zone on a zoning map and publicizing it to the public. And then if 20% of
Yes,
the neighbors,
Yes, absolutely.
500-foot radius, file a.
regular process. So let's, yeah. We don't need to
Okay, that would
Yes.
be kind of a tedious process, but that's the process we have to follow to do that.
Yes.
So Commissioner Randolph would like to add industrial, the word industrial to their recommendation. Commissioner Harrison, do you have a question or is your hand up from before?
What?
Commissioner Harrison?
Yes, a question, why do we want to remove industrial?
No, add industrial.
Oh, sorry, I meant, why do we want to add that?
Because there's industrial split zones.
So, yeah, there may be some, it's no harm in adding that. The background, again, some of this goes back to 1925 and the first zoning map, or 1930. There's a note on the zoning map that says if the zoning boundary does not obviously coincide with a property line, the offset is considered to be 125 feet from the street line. So just creating, back in the day, some of those arbitrary or defined setbacks from a street line have created this split zone configuration. For example, like, you know, a lot of the boundary of commercial properties along the post road is 200 feet from the boundary of the post road, which again, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't coincide with the property line. So when it doesn't, we should decide which it's going to be. There's less of it in the industrial zone, but that doesn't mean there aren't any. So it's just kind of a cleanup. And we've got lots of situations in residential zones where somebody, hey, I'm in partially A, partially R3, partially 1 acre, partially 2 acre. It's more prevalent, I think, in some of those areas, but yeah, it's going to be a big, yes, it's going to be a laborious undertaking to define all those, redraw the map, identify all of those affected property owners and discuss that. But
Right.
I don't know how many there is, but it's.
All right. Well, we can go through it.
It's just,
I mean,
it's a long-term
that's
item
fine.
to do.
What are the thoughts on adding industrial to the current language?
So I have a comment on adding industrial, which is that 8-30G cannot be imposed on an industrial zone unless you allow residential in that zone. So right now, whatever is industrial, not subject to 8-30G. However, I assume by changing it, we would get rid of the industrial and put it into residential, perhaps, if it's bordering on a residential, or if it borders on a commercial.
No, I would probably say.
That would be up to the commission.
Can I finish?
I would think it would be more likely in that scenario that if you've got a split zoned industrial residential property, that would make, depending on the circumstance, may make more sense to make the entirety of the parcel industrial rather than split zone.
But nowhere in this document are we envisioning getting an influx of industrial development, are we? I mean, that'd be great, but are we expecting that? I thought it was residential.
Well, you've got a hearing now scheduled for February 4th. That's going to be a new industrial building in the industrial zone for contractor storage yards. So there's still a need for industrial uses.
Okay. I didn't realize.
Yes, there are. I mean, with Amazon, with warehouses, right, Jeff?
Yes.
100%. But Kathy, I'd like to, Kathy, that I was interested in hearing what you were saying. I don't think you finished.
So 8-30G has one anomaly, and that is very few exceptions. Wetlands are exceptions, WPCA is an exception, and industrial is an exception. And I assume it's because Connecticut would like to not discourage industrial development. We've lost too much already. So I'm assuming that's the reason why an industrial zone, unless it allows residential, a developer cannot impose an 8-30G development there. So that would be a concern of putting industrial there. Would not want to incentivize this commissioner or a further makeup of this commission to say, oh, we don't have any need for industrial, right there. Let's make that residential. Well, then you're inviting an 8-30G. That's what I'm saying. And the reason against affordable housing HH30G tends to incentivize over scale developments because they don't have to use zoning rules and the burden of proof shifts to the committee instead of the applicant on appeal. And in exchange, they have to have 30% of the units affordable, which means they build up and build out to the max to get as many rate units. So that's the problem with enabling.
Well, what I would suggest to you is the converse is probably more likely, that it would be an expansion. If you've got a split zone residential property today, it's part residential and part industrial. You could make the argument that, hey, that property permits residential, therefore it's eligible for 8-30G. But if we take that split away and make it all industrial, then that concern goes away. So I think it's probably more likely that you're going to see an increase in the industrial zone rather than a decrease.
Wait, are you saying if something is split right now with half industrial, half residential, they could put an 8-30G there? I don't think they could. They would have to put it on half.
Well, again, my point is, if that's the case, it's just as likely that you're going to make it entirely industrial, therefore eliminating your concern.
Well, how can you predict that?
You'll be able to look at all of this when we go through the exercise, but
I
this has been brought
can't.
up by the Economic Development Department, as well as, a specific request from Mark Barnhart and other commercial property owners, that it is really complicated when you have parcels that are multiply zoned. And so this is really just a cleanup exercise. All of these questions that you have, you can look at on a parcel by parcel basis when we get to actually doing this process. But I think the process is a valid one that we should endeavor to complete.
I would like to know what the larger parcels, let's say around the road, do we know which ones have mixed zones? Do we have a map of?
No.
Well,
We're not going to be able to talk about that tonight.
If I
These are
may,
really-
let's bring this, hold on, let's bring this,
What
hold
it
on,
is?
let's bring this back to the language.
Is
Jeff
there,
is,
is it,
Jeff is suggesting we add industrial. Is there consensus as the current language with the addition of industrial?
I would not like that industrial.
Okay,
Stated.
I'm okay with including industrial.
I'm okay with including it.
Okay, everyone here is good with it.
All right, so
But
let's move on.
I would
I'm
just
sorry,
like to
go ahead.
note, I just want to note to
Go ahead.
staff, these are valid questions that we will be asking if this does come before us. So I hope we get that information.
course.
Absolutely.
Without
Yes.
a
Of
doubt,
course.
you will have a map and an inventory of all the potentially impacted parcels before anything is implemented.
But going
Thank
too in detail now kind of doesn't make sense because.
No,
it's
I
not
don't, I
clear.
agree. I don't think it's
Yeah.
appropriate either. Believe
So
me.
number 7,
I think
number
we have to
7.
understand the impact of what we're doing, that's all.
I think, but we do. I don't think
Yeah,
we need to.
Now we do.
We don't think
Now
we
we
need to
do.
go through it in detail as we've been talking about. I think we can be a little quicker with this because, I mean, we're just
Yeah.
getting a lot very into the weeds and detail here, where I think everybody understands what this means. So number 7.
Let's go to 7. And Commissioner Harrison, can you just lower your hand so I know when you actually
Oh,
want to get in
sorry.
here?
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, number 7, review zoning map to examine opportunities to widen the commercial corridor along Kings Highway. Objections.
I don't remember discussing this. What does that entail? How wide would it go? What are we talking about? Or how did this come up? This was obviously a red line.
So this was a specific request again from Economic Development, particularly on the south side of Kings Highway, extending to the highway itself. That's an area where you have some remnant residential properties that are nearing about 100 years old for some of these residential buildings that are kind of entering into disrepair. And we have that same issue where we've got just the frontage along Kings Highway that is zoned commercial and maybe 2 to 3 parcels behind it because of the construction of I-95 in the 50s that cut that residential neighborhood in, cut off other portions of that residential neighborhood. Where you then only have a couple of residential parcels behind that commercial frontage on Kings Highway. And for potential redevelopment purposes, it probably makes sense to rezone that whole entire area on the south side of Kings Highway only, as a starting point for discussion to deepen that commercial zone.
Okay, just to expand on that, the same qualifiers would apply to number 7 as we just discussed in number 6. It would take a robust analysis of the map, looking at which parcels it may be applicable to and whether or not you want to consider it. But the reality is along Kings Highway, the current commercial district is one parcel deep. So it's not a straight line at a certain offset. It kind of zigzags along the property boundaries. There aren't any parcels more than one deep on Kings Highway where that applies. So again, it's just something to look at. You may not want to consider it, but all the same analysis criteria that applied to number 6 would have to apply to number 7 when and if you get to that point.
So we are good in this room. Commissioner Harrison, are you a yes or a no on this?
Can you explain?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Kathy, I'm just going to answer his question. I'm good.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So when you say the south side of Kings Highway, are you talking about from where Stop and Shop on Villa Avenue is down back to Chambers Street where like the gas station is? What part of
Yeah.
Kings, talking about the whole
Yes.
Yes.
Kings Highway? And the south side meaning the side facing the ocean?
Between I-95 and Kings Highway.
Between I-95 and Villa, basically. And again, we're not necessarily limiting it to any particular side of the road, but right now that entire stretch is only one parcel deep. And it's just a suggestion, again, through the Economic Development Commission has been talking about this for years and years and years. Hey, could there be, we might be able to get more reinvestment if we considered maybe deepening that.
It would
That's
be
a
nice if there was
long-term, longer term vision project.
I hear you. So it would be good if there was a map showing that like there is for other areas, but we're talking about where the Board of Ed building is and where that VW defunct dealership is, that whole stretch of road?
Everything between I-95 and Bill Evans.
I don't, when you say I-95, I-95 runs parallel, doesn't it?
Yes.
Exit 24, I'm sorry.
Okay. So from exit 24 all the way up Kings Highway towards Bridgeport, where you cross over to North Avenue. That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
I'm good with the language.
So to the wider
Thank you.
quarter, you mean take residential and convert them to commercial wherever the houses are? Because there's a whole neighborhood back there like Berwick Avenue and
Yes.
Fairchild.
Yeah, we're not talking en masse from all the way from Kings Highway to I-95, but just,
Within that boundary.
just a consideration to look at it when we're examining the map. Area.
We're examining opportunities.
Okay, just reviewing and examining, I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you. And then last recommendation on page 36, review Tungus Hill corridor for potential changes from neighborhood design district to design commercial district in appropriate locations.
I don't know what that means. Tungus
This came
Hill.
out of the discussion in the last draft, particularly if you look at our map, we have a pretty big neighborhood design district that extends probably farther down Old Stratfield Road than it should because there's a lot of non-commercial uses there. And portions of Tungus Hill Road, including most of the former SCAP dealership properties, are in the now neighborhood design district. So because of obviously the change in use that's potentially ongoing there, the successor purchasers of the SCAP dealerships are relocating most of their holdings down to Commerce Drive. So it's likely that there's going to be some manner of reuse of those automobile dealerships that are some of which are presently non-conforming uses. So we discussed this at a prior draft that maybe when, again, looking at the map, is to convert some of what's now neighborhood design district to neighborhood design commercial district.
And we just, okay, we're familiar with that neighborhood because we just took up an 8-30G on Tungus Hill Road. That's not again, Tungus Hill cutoff. So the SCAP dealer is like across from that parcel. We're talking about from Villa Avenue up Tungus Hill Road, but not Tungus Hill cutoff, which is kind of combined with Tungus Hill Road, all the way up to Black Rock Turnpike.
Again, you'd have to look at the zoning map. I don't have one in front of me here. What where the line is drawn, where between neighborhood design district and design commercial district,
Mhm.
there are some mismatched current uses are not permitted in the neighborhood design district as currently constituted. And so maybe it makes more sense to include them in the design commercial district.
I
We've
would
got the
just
car
say-
wash, the car wash, for example, the car wash that's on Tungus Hill.
By
It's
neighborhood
been looking,
So-
you know, that it's been looking to add potential an oil change service. We've told them repeatedly, in our view, that would be an expansion of a non-conforming use. If that were made a design commercial district, they'd have a little more flexibility in how they can conduct their business.
Didn't somewhere else in this, the housing section, maybe talk about expanding the neighborhood design district to be all through every district in our town, or to expand? At least that's what I recall in some application we recently heard, that we're looking to expand neighborhood design district. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. I'm thinking, we're not talking about condos, we're talking about village districts here? No, we're talking,
Not the design residence
we're talking about
district.
condos. We're talking about multifamily housing, right?
Yeah, no, that's a different topic. That's an
Okay.
expansion or revisiting what used to be permitted under the design residence district
Design residence,
regime.
I'm sorry.
We're
Neighbor-
just simply stating right here, particularly up in Tungus Hill corridor, there's existing mismatches of uses for what's currently uses that are there now today that are not permitted uses because they fall into the neighborhood design district.
And
And
neighborhood design
because they,
is commercial in the neighborhood, commercial district in the neighborhood.
yes. Sure what I just said.
I don't know.
Is
I
there-
just, I don't comprehend what this means exactly, but
Is there
Again,
consensus on?
I'll give you
language?
I'll give you the example.
Okay.
The car wash on Tungus Hill Road is one example of an existing non-conforming use because it's in a neighborhood design district. That use isn't going anywhere anytime soon, I don't believe. They've actually, again, inquired on how they could make some improvements or expand their offerings. And because that's a non-conforming use, they're not permitted to do so. If they were made a permitted use by changing the zone to design commercial district, they've had more flexibility in how they can conduct their business.
okay,
That's the best example I can give you.
that makes sense then. And plus it's just to review the zoning map. You know, it would be very helpful though, if we could have little pictures of the zoning map here so we could envision what it looks like. There's no description of this really in the narrative portion. This is just the strategy summary, so it'd be helpful to have a little copy of the, you know, of what it would look like, or something there that illustrates it a little bit.
I hear you. Yep.
Okay.
We will take that under advisement.
Commissioner Brand, you said you're a yes on that?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. Okay, so
Everybody
Go ahead.
else is all set,
everybody else, I believe, is all set. Yeah,
including Commissioner Harrison?
I believe so. Commissioner Harrison, you were a yes on that, right?
I am a yes now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next up, we are turning to page 44.
wait, do we?
That is,
wait?
Commissioner
Oh.
Braun, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
ahead, sorry.
Never mind. That was number 8, sorry.
Yep. Okay, so we're on page 44, strategies for an interconnected community. Just as a reminder, it's 9:23, which gives us about 20 minutes to start going through this, so we could spend the last few minutes to discuss the next steps.
I have the,
Page 44.
I have a problem with the title. I think this is about transit and that's all it's about. It's very confusing, these.
We're going to add subtitles.
Again, we've talked about this and we've
Just can't
agreed in
stand
the
these
last
titles.
session that we're going to put some further explanatory items on the subtext to the chapter titles.
We should just change the title there. Okay.
On A1, there's a new bike and ped policy coming out. I don't know I don't know if you need to make reference to it. That's just for your.
So start with strategy A. A1, continue to advance the recommendations of the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Commissioner Randolph.
And any updates maybe?
We're
Commissioner Randolph is suggesting we change this to end new updates because I believe they have a new plan, right?
Yeah, there's a new one coming out.
Well, can we just
Other-
maybe reword that, because this is going to be for 10 years, and just say relevant or, you know, ongoing changes or amendments.
I think
know what I
that's what
mean?
I just suggested. I said, and any updates?
Okay.
Well,
No,
Say
okay.
the prevailing bicycle and pedestrian.
Any
plan.
ongoing updates to the master? I don't know. I'd just be more specific.
Commissioner Levy suggested the prevailing bicycle and pedestrian master plan, so I guess it would reflect whatever is current at the time.
I think we got the
Prevailing
intent.
sounds great. Great word.
You guys,
So we could always count on the lawyer for that.
I'm good with
And we're on
prevailing.
just to for confirmation, we're on page
44.
where are we?
44.
44. Thank you.
Okay, so any objections to continue to advance the recommendations of the prevailing bicycle and pedestrian master plan?
I would add something about with connectivity to open space areas and parks and rec,
But
or
the pedestrian master plan is a document, I
That,
think.
yeah, that comes in number 4.
Okay,
Like I just want to add something here too when I have the floor.
Go ahead, please.
Can we also add the complete streets policy to
That's in
number
here.
1?
That's number 3.
So W Street's design
well,
guide.
that should be updated because, yeah.
Wait, but we have the complete. Oh, so we need this. So after the ordinance was adopted, we need to have this design guide, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. When is that
Which
coming?
is, it's that Bike and Ped committee is working on it. I'm actually writing it, so with
There's a
DPW.
there's a grant opportunity that's out there to help
Yeah.
look at that.
You know,
Again, this goes, there is language on page 41 that talks about the complete streets policy. But then again, the next step in this is to develop the design guide. The ordinance, as you're well aware, has been adopted. Next steps are to get the design guide.
Gotcha.
Well, the
Are there
complete streets,
pedestrian plazas here?
sorry,
I see bicycles, but no, I see pedestrian master plan. But does that include like little plazas for people that aren't bicyclists?
No, I think their plan is the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. I guess, pedestrians, how to better safely, better infrastructure for
Yeah, but I-
either on bike or
so
pedestrian.
just
I
to,
prefer like a pedestrian plazas
yeah, but
as opposed to like racing bicycles where people are walking.
Commissioner Collins, this is, I think this is referring to as a specific document that is created and I guess will be updated by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee,
there's a whole work stream behind this.
which I don't know if what you're suggesting
No, it's just-
part of that, but this is a specific document, so I think we would have to, if you wanted to.
There's other comments about sidewalk connectivity further along on this page.
Like little plazas.
I don't know what you mean by that.
I don't think.
Well, every, like other towns and even New York City, they have, requirements where, if somebody's building something or they're doing a bicycle,
Mhm.
the Bloomberg bicycle lanes and all that stuff, they kind of forgot about little pedestrian plazas, inlets, like pedestrian plazas where people can like sit down
Mhm.
or,
Yeah.
before they go into a store or things like that. And,
Yeah, that's, okay. I understand what you're saying. There is a huge array of menu of bonus type of things in New York zoning. Say, okay, if you provide a public plaza, you get 5 more stories on your, 58-story building and those types of metrics. I think when we talk about pedestrian friendly in those kind of infrastructure improvements, more into the design guidelines and our downtown type of stuff that we've kind of already covered. This particular item is pretty specific to work like a pedestrian committee. But that said, as we go through this page, there's some other sidewalk specific stuff.
Okay.
What you're talking about and what you see in New York is generally happening on.
well, some towns have it too, a lot of,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of covered in B1 when we get there for placemaking.
Mhm.
And we can add in, for example, plazas if you want to add it in there.
But-
I
So
think there's
I'm sorry if
opportunity
I
for that
missed it. Do
language.
we have a vote on or consensus for number 1?
You know what?
Can we-
I have my hand up. I've
Oh.
had my hand up for a few minutes, so I'm just waiting to be called on.
Okay, Commissioner Harrison, can I just clarify with Commissioner Collins on his
Yeah.
suggestion? You good with addressing that as a separate recommendation
well,
within one of the subsequent.
Yes,
Okay.
some.
All right, so let's just, so Commissioner Harrison, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Sure.
yeah, sorry, I'm just losing my place here. I just want to, on the first one, I'm just going to also suggest that we add the Vision Zero initiative that's been just recently added by the first selectman and the
Under what?
RTM.
Vision
The Vision
Zero.
Zero initiative.
What's that?
I think,
as well as-
I think that's a good suggestion. My
Okay,
comment
so
there
I'd
is I
like to
agree
add-
with you. I think that's, no, but I would think that's better added to number 3 versus than number 1.
What is the
But I-
division initiative?
Vision Zero.
What
It's
is
to
that?
essentially eliminate all traffic-related deaths and injuries by what,
thank
2034,
you.
I think.
Yeah, it's a
So,
pledge. to
other towns have
consider-
that as well.
Yeah, I think
Sorry.
that's a great suggestion, but I would suggest we can fold that additional language into number 3 rather than the number 1.
Okay,
Just
then
back to
I was
number
also
1.
going to add the complete street right-of-way manual and the sidewalk repair program too.
That's something different. Sidewalk repair is something different. But I'm sorry, back to number 1, if you put.
Well, wait a minute,
Street plan
can we put where the two things that Alexis said, can we put elsewhere?
Yeah.
Maybe
yeah,
falls under number
certainly-
3.
Certainly Vision Zero, number 3, and then repair in
Can you say that other one again? I'm sorry.
You should, oh, sure. It's the right-of-way, the complete right-of-way manual from engineering, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, that's
And then the sidewalk-
that's a number 3.
Okay, so the same term. Okay, so different terms. Okay.
I don't see it in number 3.
Well,
He just
I
said
think
it
we're
with
saying the
different
same thing.
terms.
If it's a proper noun, it should be identified as a document that exists instead of.
So just to clarify this, because I'm working on this stuff. This addresses it completely. There's a couple of different documents. They're coming together. This addresses the intent. Back to number 1, if we put bicycle and pedestrian master plan in quotes, since it's a document, maybe that would clarify things.
But isn't the
Yeah,
complete-
and the suggestion said the word prevailing, but
But if we just put it in quotes, since it's a document, but develop a complete streets design guide, that's going on right now, and that covers a lot of things. So I think that's to my satisfaction. I'm working on this.
That includes Commissioner, that includes Vision Zero.
Yes.
That
Vision Zero, okay.
includes-
And I
Okay.
think we're recommending that goes number 3, and we can add that when we get
Yeah.
there. But
Yes,
Okay, so
What-
is Commissioner
sorry.
Harrison, are you good with number 1?
so continue to
can come
advance
back to your-
recommendations of the bike ped master plan in quotes.
Yeah.
the
put that
prevail would be
prevailing.
the prevail. We're adding the word
Prevailing, right.
prevailing
Right,
bicycle.
right, right.
pedestrian.
Yeah. And I know we've
You're
talked
yes
about
on
this
that.
before.
Mhm.
I know we've mentioned this before, but I think it would be really great if we could add the hyperlinks to all these plans just so people can know where to access them.
I think it's
Once
kind of
it's-
a nightmare in a static document,
Yeah.
because.
Because they die, yeah, deadline.
Yeah, that would work for the first week or so, and then when
Yeah,
things change, it would be impossible to keep up with.
I think that people.
Oh,
are-
so that
are-
could, okay.
I think people are really
Okay.
good at Googling as long as we have a really good title for whatever the document is, but I think hyperlinks are, they're just so
People are
bad to
great at
make.
Googling, but our website honestly is not exactly user friendly. So that's why I'm offering that suggestion.
Yep. Yeah, no.
It's hard to,
it's
it's
an
honestly
idea,
hard
but
to,
I
it's
think
not very
just-
hard to find documents.
Yeah.
I do agree with that, but yeah. So I'm sorry. So everyone is good with recommendation A1 with the proposed changes? Everyone in this
Yes.
room, Commissioner Harrison, Commissioner Braun, and
Yes.
I'm good with
I
number
heard
1, and I
Harrison.
have questions about this section in general.
Okay, so we're good on 1. Commissioner Braun, go ahead.
So we're not referencing anything about the DOT road diet and what they're working on? Shouldn't that be referenced in this section? This has to do with safety and things like that. It says pursue.
Under construction.
And I'm
Well,
trying-
that project's likely going to be completed by the time we get to adoption.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective, Kathy, there are, I think right now, 70 projects identified by Department of Public Works.
DOT?
So that's one of 7, yeah. By DPW,
Oh, wait,
70. So that's one of 70.
but I mentioned DOT. Are there other DOT projects as well that maybe we should
Yes.
reference
There's
DOT?
the peanut. There's what, probably 6?
There's,
They're mentioned in here too.
Yeah. But if we get into the project level, it would be out of date and,
No, I agree with that, but I do feel like we should be cognizant of what DOT is doing. We never find out. It doesn't go to us. It's not really in our jurisdictional authority, but it certainly impacts what we do. I would like to see something in here about coordinate, collaborate, communicate with DOT and maybe DPW to understand what their projects are better.
that's addressed since we're talking about interconnected community, and this is largely bike and ped, which is what I spend a lot of time on. There in the policy statement, that is addressed.
Where?
It's in draft form.
Oh.
In the draft policy statement, that's all addressed.
Can we revisit that in strategy B, which is addressing critical roadways and intersections?
And then
I don't even think it needs to be addressed.
If we, yeah.
We don't even need to. It's
on item
it's in a
3,
different,
oh,
it's covered,
sorry.
yeah.
We have to get to
We're not
item
at
2
3
first.
yet?
Commissioner
Okay.
Braun, before we get to 3.
Safety.
Commissioner Harrison, did you have a comment?
On 3,
No, on 2.
I'm
I
sorry.
just saw your
Oh,
hand
sorry.
up.
Oh, I'll take that down. Sorry again.
Item 2, identify new safety standards such as corner visibility standards that can be added to regulations that will advance complete streets. Objections?
Again, complete streets is a ordinance that the town passed. It's in the town code now. Shouldn't that be capitalized? So it's not just a concept, it's a project or a program. Jeff, shouldn't we identify it better?
I'm okay with it being lowercase. It's a concept.
I do think this is one where we may want to say that added to regulations that will advance the goals of complete streets at Vision Zero, because we are talking about safety standards.
Sure.
And Vision Zero should be capitalized. That's a program. That's the name of a program.
I'm okay with that.
Hyperlinks, no one knows what that means, Or maybe say, or other programs that are developed, relating to transit safety.
so, all right, can I go back to what you just said? What you're suggesting is take number 2 as it is to be added to regulations that will advance complete streets. And then we just add the words policies in the town's Vision Zero pledge.
Yes.
Yes, sounds great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, I think the idea there that Kathy's suggesting that Vision Zero pledge be capitalized since it's a policy.
Okay, so yes is in the room. I heard a yes from Commissioner
Oh, yeah.
Harrison.
All those changes.
Yes.
Good, okay, thank you. Recommendations A3, still on page 44.
And shouldn't that be capitalized complete? By the way, we don't do the complete streets design guide. The complete streets group does that, right? We're not doing that.
Correct.
Technically, it's done by state and federal governments who have design standards. We adopt those standards.
So the TP commission would just be responsible for supporting from us for that, right? Do we have any involvement in that at all?
I think you're right in the sense that it's really going to be Public Works, engineering, providing guidance into the development of that document through the Bike and Ped Committee and whoever else is tasked with this. There's a Safe Streets for All grant that's out there that's going to be rolled out to develop a plan to identify priorities. I don't think that this commission is going to be the initiator of that document, but this is just recognizing within the community that there needs to be developed a complete streets design guide.
And to understand, does not govern private development, it governs public projects, right?
Correct. You can't have, a complete street you can't do a complete street one parcel at a time. It has to be a transportation project. That said, our existing regulations require you and an applicant to review how a private development communicates or provides connectivity to those public infrastructure. You have your site plan requirements require a bike and pedestrian analysis to show how folks are going to get safely from the public improvements into the private improvements.
So should our regulations then be updated to address complete streets? That seems to be a pretty large scale change in the public interface to the private development.
Well, like you just said, it is in the public property realm. We already require the private property side to interface with whatever might be developed on the public infrastructure.
Oh, but we don't, well, okay, so we don't mention complete streets in our zoning regs. That might be one of the updates we want to do, perhaps. Because it didn't exist, right? And we have not changed our zoning regulations to, we've changed them to talk about bike ped, but we have not changed them to discuss complete streets and how that could, right, impact development.
Right, but again, going back to your initial statement, I agree with you. The complete streets does not impact private property. It's only within the public property realm.
Right, okay. So we're not developing a complete streets design guide. Perhaps number 3 could be reworded to say, communicate, deal complete streets in our own work that we do.
Some of these are not specific to you. Some of these are specific to the town, generally, right? So some of these are town goals, even if you are not individually responsible for doing this as the TPZ commission. So this has come up repeatedly in terms of being a town, and it's been requested we put this in the POCD, even if you are not the agency responsible for doing it.
Is there a way of ensuring better collaboration of us with the people doing things like complete streets so we know, could we get a forum, seminar, a meeting? Because
Jeff is volunteering.
I just sent you the draft policy, so.
Jeff is volunteering to do that for
Thank
you.
you, Jeff. Great.
And I would
Can we vote-
also
we-
like all of us
Go ahead.
can attend these. I was just to say all of us are welcome to attend these meetings just to make us, smarter commissioners.
Do
If
you
we're not
vote on-
previously
we
occupied.
vote on number 3?
I'll volunteer too.
All right, so develop a complete streets design guide. Objections, are we all good with this? Everyone remote, good with this?
Yes.
Thank you.
On number 4, there was, in the Conservation Commission, they had made reference to this.
Yeah, I think they wanted, how did they want, I'm trying to remember how they wanted the
Saying-
language.
Yeah, make greenways along the riverine.
Yeah, I think we have some of that language in the on the environmental section.
Just when Mary collars me, I want to make sure.
That's where that.
I think it is in the environmental section, but I think that the intent was that this is paired with that. So there, I mean, the
She said she spoke to
POCD
you today. so-
POCD is like a Venn diagram, right?
It
There's
is-
lots of
it
areas
is-
of overlap.
It is strategy A3 on page 61 that we have yet to get to.
Oh, let's see, strategy.
Approve. Kathy, Mary talked to me about this one specifically, so.
What did she say? I see she's on the call.
She said she spoke to Emmeline and we're good.
About that item there,
Number 4, yes.
but
Are we
it,
voting on this with current, are we talking about proposed changes or are we?
No, what I'm saying is what Jeff's alluding to is covered in more detail in a chapter that's entitled the environmentally rooted community.
All right, any objections to 4 as written? Coordinate passive biking and walking
I'm good with
opportunities
that.
with greenway identification. Everyone in the room is good.
That's fine.
Yep.
Commissioner Harrison?
Yes. Good. Thanks.
Okay. Number 5, still on page 44, pursue funding for a future study for possible micro-mobility and alternative transportation solutions. I see Commissioner Randolph is giving a thumbs up.
Yep.
Any objections here?
Good. Language
Good.
is
Commissioner
good.
Braun?
when we talk about alternative transportation solutions, we're talking about like a micro mobility, that's like a mini trolley or something like that?
Could be anything other than a car.
Yeah,
So-
anything like, scooters, things like that.
Would that intersect with shared parking? Like, for example, if you're gonna have a trolley that goes up and down town, people will drive to the trolley, then take the trolley up and down the post road. So would we need to study the ability to have parking for people to get to the trolley? Like
If there's going to be some sort of alternative transportation solution that demands parking in and of itself, that will have to be discussed at that time.
Well, didn't we
And we
touch on
could
this
say
the
an
last time? But it was about
access-
the old minibus system in
Yeah.
Westport.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of things. So we kind of distilled the language back when we talked about in the prior draft, kind of distilled this language down to this. And that's what the red line reflects, that prior
I thought
discussion.
trolley, yeah, I thought I saw trolley in here somewhere, but it's not on this strategy.
There's a range of
We did-
potential options I think we could consider as part of this.
I have a quick question, if I may.
Go ahead.
And apologies, Jim, I don't have the document in front of me that you sent on outreach, but was there any, I guess, check-ins with the Disabilities Commission or SEPTA, the special ed PTA on this section? It just might lend itself to, make it more robust and thorough, but just a thought.
What was that first group?
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, that was the second group. You mentioned SEPTA second, but what was the first group you mentioned?
I think there's a Disabilities Commission. I think Julie DeMarco runs it. I'm not.
I think
The social services, yeah.
we just recreated
Social
that
services?
on this. I think
I'm
that
sorry?
was disparate. I seem to recall at the last Board of Selectmen, I feel like they just recreated it. Is that right? Or it's like, we can check in with Julie.
Well, clearly, if any, you make an excellent point that any consideration of these future transportation solutions would need to have their input.
Mm.
But I mean, I don't know that we need to say that here, but I think if such a conversation is going to be had, I think you identify some key stakeholders that need to be part of that
Yeah,
discussion.
and ML, yeah, okay, that's fine. And Emmeline, you're correct. It's brand new, so obviously we wouldn't have been reach yet. All right, thank you.
I know it's late, so don't want to enter another topic, myself.
Are you going to
Yeah,
on to another section?
I'm gonna save one.
Okay.
Have we, I'm sure you've considered talking to the universities that I see, their buses running all the time. Is there any way to add that thought to this, or is that in a different section?
I think, well, strategy C does talk about student mobility.
Oh, yeah, well, it's, yeah, I guess
Mentioning it.
it is under C, but just
What are we
to
in?
make
Oh.
sure, it'd be great if, like, I see in other cities, they've got one mass transit system for students and citizens and.
I don't think right now they've wanted to really open up
No, I'm
their
just saying
system.
study,
Right.
study.
I mean, they can certainly be part of the conversation. My understanding is they haven't wanted to open up their system to general population members. And I don't know that the system that we have right now is robust enough to include their population for the trips and the limited trip area that they provide. So I don't know that there's enough overlap right now to make both parties happy or satisfied.
Yeah, I'm just saying evaluate.
We can,
Yeah.
sure.
But this could be a backdoor into that.
Yeah.
See, yeah.
Where did the university go to be able to like maybe take a little less traffic from off campus to their school and allowing them to like do smaller bus or not a trolley, but like a minibus to that area. So it can kind of eliminate some of the traffic. Because they're really only getting up in the morning, going to class, coming back, parking. But just to have a pickup there, and that might help out some of the full-time residents in the beach area there.
I think they do though. I mean, were they?
I think they only have the big stag bus and it's really kind of too big of a bus for them to go down there, but I'm not sure. If incorporate the smaller I mean, that's where you work with the university. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, we can certainly ask that. I mean, I think that is covered by Strategy C. Clearly, I think there's been a need to kind of continue the dialogue.
I think strategy 5, recommendation 5 rather, gives us wide latitude. If we're pursuing funding for a study, we can touch on all of these and lots of other things, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did,
So
I hadn't read to C, so I think between C and 5, I think it addresses that issue.
Yeah.
do we have consensus on 5 as written?
Yes.
Yeses in the
Yes.
room? Yes.
I'm okay.
Commissioner Braun?
Yep.
Okay, so we're good on that. It's 9:50 now. We're through strategy A. Do we have a curfew here, given the different locations?
Entirely up to you.
How does the commission feel about just committing to getting through the rest of this page?
Yeah, I think we
And
can
then
do
we
that.
can,
Yeah.
and then we can
I
have
think we
that
could do
discussion
that.
about next.
This
You
is
have to
not
exit.
too controversial.
I might have to exit because it's the beginning of a new semester. That's, you know, I gotta.
Got it, okay. All right, well, understood, all right.
So give a paying job to consider.
So we'll try to get through this page, or we will get through this page.
Productive.
Commissioner Collins as long as
Take
possible.
the lantern point shut up.
All right.
All right, let's go.
Strategy,
I could have hopped on the shuttle.
I don't know what a placemaking study is.
strategy, we're on strategy B. Recommendation 1, pursue funding to undertake a placemaking strategy, placemaking traffic and safety study along Post Road. Identify opportunities to make downtown safer, more attractive corridor. Any objections on this?
Well, it's already being done by DOT, isn't it?
No, not in that stretch. The road diet goes only up to, what street is that?
Well, it starts at Rennell Drive.
It goes
and ends at,
to,
Like Thorpe, Beacon,
no, it doesn't go that far.
it's west of that.
It's
It's,
just it's about.
what's the street name?
It's
Beaumont. I think it is Beaumont.
Beaumont.
Right before
That's
the-
really where
right
the
before the little
downtown
cemetery.
area ends. You're talking about the actual true downtown center district then.
Correct. So I think, one of the things that was identified by our POCD consultant when they came into town is they felt like, and we did get this response in some of the workshops that we did, that even the area of downtown, it's still a little harrowing as a pedestrian. Some of the crosswalks are really wide, and they don't give enough time for pedestrians to really feel safe about crossing. So in part of this placemaking, I think it speaks to what Peter asked about, which was, are there ways to have areas of pedestrian respite, placemaking, like little plazas, things that kind of slow down, I think, some of the areas where pedestrians don't feel as safe. So,
Bustle and bustle.
Does that include going under the overpasses?
well,
It's in here.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
This is in here, so.
yes.
To talk about
So,
curling.
so I think it's, it is a comprehensive, it would be a comprehensive traffic, pedestrian safety and placemaking study for that part of the post road.
Can you tell me what a
And
placemaking?
sometimes,
Yeah, sorry.
so for example, like you want to use pavement treatment that's the same. So right now we have a lot of the brick pavers that we use in conjunction with asphalt sidewalks. Concrete sidewalks. And so the question is, if you're going to have a downtown that has a distinctive feel, even to signage, I think Jeff had talked about that. It's in a different section than this, but you want to have kind of a unified commercial environment. So you're using the same streetlights, you're using benches that are similar, you're using pavement treatment that's kind of similar, bulb outs that speak to, that have kind of a similar visual presence to them so that cars know how to interact with them as well as pedestrians, as well as cyclists. So placemaking is just, having all of these visually identifiable features.
Does this
You're-
intersect
when
at
you're in
all?
downtown.
Sorry. A quick question. Does this intersect at all with the green downtown, like suggestions that are farther along in the environmental sections?
The stormwater infrastructure, I mean,
It's related because you'll have catchments at the end of the blocks where bulb outs are. So they do, there are
Could be,
there are
yes.
connections, yes.
Thank you. I'm in favor of the funding. I think it's a
I
great
just sent you the
idea.
document Go to section 6 in the document I just sent.
Commissioner Harrison?
No,
We try to-
I'm good for now. Sorry.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm
we're
good
already
with the
doing some of
language.
it, but- Yeah, makes sense.
Everyone, you're good?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Braun, are
So
you good with number one?
placemaking only has to do with having a sort of a uniform aesthetic design as opposed to creating a place.
Right.
Aesthetic thing. Thanks. I understand it.
A feeling of place, not a sense of place, not creating new place.
Feeling of
All right,
belonging.
so you're good with that, Commissioner Braun?
I'm good.
Okay. Recommendation 2, pursue funding for the project implementation of the Black Rock Turnpike Traffic Safety Study and Access Management Strategies. Any objections?
What are access management strategies? It sounds like a good idea.
Within that safety study, there's an appendix that identifies as properties redevelop in that corridor, opportunities to reduce the number of curb cuts. That's what's meant by access management, how many curb cuts there are that access the street.
I'm sorry, this is done. What was the year of this? Like TOD?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
If this is an official study that was already done, I think it should be capitalized and also the year of the study, so we know what we're talking about. I forgot, we already did this study once.
This was a study that was led by MetroCog, that there were
That's right.
public.
I think it was 20.
Yeah, okay, so you want to date the study and make it
I just-
capitalized.
Yeah, I want to identify it so we know to go look for it, to know what it says, you know.
Yep,
We're not gonna put a link in, but
Gotcha.
We good then with it?
same
Three.
thing with the next one, traffic circle, post road.
Number 3, pursue project implementation funding for post road circle safety study. Everyone good with this?
MetroCog one, the same year or different, that was a different year, right?
Yeah, it was, the Post Road study came after the Black Rock Turnpike study, but they were in fairly close succession.
I would just identify it more clearly with
Yep,
capital.
you want the
letters.
date of the study and capitalized.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, everyone online good with this?
Yes.
Okay. Number 4, pursue funding for traffic calming and urban streetscape improvements for the Fairfield Black Rock Station area and Ash Creek Boulevard.
Traffic calming street stays. I don't know where that is. Where's the traffic problem right now? Ash Creek Boulevard, there's no traffic on Ash Creek
I don't
Boulevard.
think this is suggesting there's a necessarily always a traffic problem. Traffic calming could just be, there could be a flow of traffic, but cars are going too fast and
Well, we're adding a lot of potential residents in that area, and right now it feels like an airport terminal overpass.
it does.
So it doesn't
It's a very
really
good
have
description.
much, it really doesn't have much to make it feel pedestrian friendly.
At all.
I think that should be pursued. It is not
Yeah,
friendly at all.
I go there every day.
Well, can we?
It's not very calm.
No.
Yeah.
Doesn't calm me at all.
All right, everyone's good with
Can we
that?
pursue bathrooms
Yes.
at the metro station?
I don't think that's in purview.
That's a different matter.
It's only been there 10 years, no restrooms.
Agreed. Okay, number 5, pursue funding for sidewalk connectivity study.
Which I guess we already have, right?
All
I
right.
don't know what that
Whatever
means.
else, sort of.
Sort of. Okay.
Partial
I
funding.
mean,
Kathy, Metro
SS4
North
grant.
can make the bathroom. Sorry.
I think an SS4 grant, we'll look at that, so.
Okay. Let's see then.
Sidewalk connectivity, would that be like everywhere in town or just in the commercial corridor areas?
It's every. it's
No,
every-
this would be broad, this would be
Everywhere.
broader, everywhere.
Or would at least be looking at.
It makes sense to do
Everywhere.
a study, but I think there'll be some areas we're just never gonna have sidewalks where there are,
That's probably true.
okay.
Everyone good?
Yes.
Okay, number 6, pursue funding for improving multimodal access under the railway underpasses per the resiliency study recommendations.
Can I add something?
Please.
Beautification. I want some murals down there.
For beautifying and improving multimodal access under.
Want to include placemaking in there?
Whatever, but I don't know. I I know somebody who does murals.
Can we add that? There's a place, I think, where it comes.
All right.
Uh,
On the program in Bridgeport.
Can we do that under B4, like
Sure.
for your community where people come together? Because I think the Arts Commission has a section there. Can we add it to that part?
Okay,
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
as long as it's covered. Here's our, we do have a local mural expert in our midst.
I went to high
think
school with her.
I think he's a regional or maybe national mural expert.
Well, Teresa Ranieri did all the artwork on the Circle Inn. I went to high school with her.
Yeah, well, that was kind of, various artists were doing that, but no, Mr. Delgado now, our new commissioner, has experience in commissioning murals and buildings in the city of Bridgeport.
In paying artists, actually getting them paid.
That's exciting.
Actually, the mural that's on the Circle Inn now is done by John Ogrodnik. Worked
Oh,
with
okay.
We did,
Oh, very
I think, 40 works in the last 3 years.
40? Great.
Are we talking about combining number 6 with number 4? Because that.
No, that was.
No, that was a
four
future,
in a different section.
a future section we haven't gotten to yet.
So 6 is
Number
remaining as
6?
is for now, but is everyone good with
multi-
6 as is?
What does that mean? Multimodal access, what, during a flood? Give them a canoe? What does that mean?
Oh,
Is that?
so bikers and walkers. So when you think of right now, South Benson, the walkers have to squeeze on the roadway with the cars. There's no room for them. So this would be making sure that each of the underpasses allows for both bikers, walkers, and vehicles.
I don't know how you do that without.
Start digging.
You do. You have to start digging.
It's gonna cost
And
a
then
boatload of
we're
dollars.
not talking about resiliency study. We're talking about during a flood, it could still go through.
Well, one of the issues that this study was looking at is because these underpasses flood fairly periodically.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm tired. That there's ways to try to reduce the impact of those flooding consequences by either some sort of pumping system or other work that needs to be done or investment made therein. But when doing so, if we're going to spend a lot of money on any kind of improvement to those infrastructure, it should include safe passage for something other than a vehicle, a car.
That's a very good idea. Totally in favor.
Okay, everyone good with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we going to be wrapping up soon? I have to probably jump in a few
Yeah,
minutes.
that
One more to go.
point one,
Okay.
strategy C1. Coordinate with Fairfield U and Sacred Heart U to develop a student mobility and parking study to identify ways to reduce the demand for off-campus parking.
Good idea. We should
That's good.
put them on a lot of
Any objections? None here. Everyone good online?
I mean,
Totally
I guess I'm just trying to understand the student parking. How is that different than from just like average parking? From parking for, average people?
Well, every time they rent an apartment, there's 4 to 5 vehicles.
Yeah,
Right?
but aren't they just, I understand that, but aren't they residents or tenants?
Well, they
I don't
are
understand
tenants.
how
Well, both.
They're residents, but
Yeah.
you could also, rather than take up back and forth, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's like what Peter's example was earlier, that if there was a way, even if they lived off campus,
They're allowed to park anywhere they want in their house,
Right.
if they have, but.
I know I have
maybe-
students. I have 6 students living right next door, and I'm well aware of what they do.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say, hey, if there was a more robust student mobility system, maybe there wouldn't be as many students that live off campus that would have to rely on a car.
Would mean it was cars on the road.
Well, and leading to, demand for parking.
You mean
Right, but also cars and traffic, to be less traffic.
Yes, yes.
like send the trolley up to the university, that type of thing?
I mean, there we
Well,
have.
again, they have their
we
own-
have a
they
stag
their own.
bus.
Yeah.
That only goes to Stop and Shop though.
Kind of morphs into the other things.
Yeah.
No, it goes
Again,
to
this is a
places
pretty
like that.
broad statement that just talks about having the conversation without being specific. Yeah.
I think
We-
there's a lot of avenues of collaborating with Fairfield U. We should be doing a lot more
we did.
than we are, especially in the green areas of the plan. Haven't gotten there yet. So I endorse this, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, me
Commissioner
too.
Harrison, you good?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
And I assume Chair Noonan, you're good with that?
Yes.
All right, so that wraps up that section. I think when we pick up next time, that brings us to a community where people come together on page 51.
Yeah, we're three
Thank you.
sevenths way through this.
Yeah.
So how do we,
I think Chair Noonan, I'll turn this part over to you in terms of how.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, the
Yeah,
next,
we're-
obviously I think we can have another I can discuss maybe offline with Jim and some others, how best proceed, but the way I would think is this. We obviously need to finish what we're doing. We also got new comments in today. So I think the next step is to have the next time we can address this is, and I don't know what that date is off the top of my head. A lot of it may depend on how we move forward at our next meetings. Maybe it's come to a time where if we find an extra half hour to an hour at a meeting that we need to pick this up and kind of keep moving. But my thought would be, at the very least, assuming we're going to be busy and filled with every other meeting, that we need to schedule another one of these in March, maybe February, but probably March. And I think discussions have always been great, and we need to make sure we understand what we're doing and asking questions of staff. But I think maybe now we need to start looking ahead and if you have questions about certain things, asking those questions to staff up front so that we can be a little more streamlined, kind of like how we were at the end, where we're looking and we're just focusing on the language and not really taking the time to go through a lot of background information. Especially now, I think that we've kind of passed a lot of the major points. So
I have a
And
question.
also, and also the next section, which is a community where people come together, is a fairly brief recommendation section if we wanted to consider trying to tack that onto another meeting agenda and
Well, we're
getting
probably not
to-
going to, yeah. I doubt we're going to do that this month.
Yeah.
Right, Mr. Wentz? I mean, I suspect how next meeting goes is going to determine a lot of things, actually.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We have a pretty aggressive schedule that we've kind of put out for you as to how we're looking for our, we've already added 2 dates to the calendar in February to get through this. It's gonna, frankly, I'm reluctant to say this, but I think, cards on the table, it's gonna get worse before it gets better in terms of the volume of applications that you're gonna have to go to public hearing with. So we'll try to carve out a date that will probably be an off-date meeting. Realistically, I would agree with Tommy that it's probably looking like March, since we've pretty much committed every Tuesday thus far in February.
But I'll say this,
I'm
though.
happy,
That's
I
just
mean-
I'm happy to meet. I'm happy to
ahead.
meet another night too, by the way.
Well, that's
Doesn't
what
have
my
to be-
next suggestion was.
Yeah.
I think come mid-February or even early February, if we're starting to see the writing on the wall, we're going to ask, I think, I would be open to asking everybody, hey, let's look at other days. And maybe that's in February and maybe that's in March. But, we've got a good head of steam going, and, like the holidays kind of, was in between. There's nothing to be done about that. But, waiting to March, if we have to, so be it. But, meeting another night may need to happen either late in February, which I'm not saying we need to do early or mid, but by early or mid-February, we're going to know how things are going to shake out. And that may require a different non-Tuesday meeting.
Yep.
I
That's
don't
fine.
know
Well,
that Sorry.
I'm sorry, Kathy. I can commit from the staff point of view. We are willing and able to meet at any time this commission deems fit. You've got a lot on your plate, and that'll ultimately be up to your own availability to arrange such
Of
a meeting.
course.
But we're up.
Go ahead,
we're
Kathy.
game for. We're game for that if you.
I don't feel that I want to meet twice a week. Once a week is a huge amount of work on a volunteer basis when people have full-time jobs. And then meeting on this in addition during the same week that we're doing 8-30Gs and amendments. I prefer to push this to a week when we're not having another meeting. But aside from that, I do have a suggestion that we've gotten input from several functional areas relating to the need for like a section on the history of the town, section on education, a better organized intro to the green areas. What if somebody could help us write that? I'm not saying form a special committee, but if somebody who, like a lady who's a historian wrote to us, I forget her name, Melanie Marks, she's like the historian that services to other towns. What if she felt like writing a one pager about the history of our town, which is severely lacking in this POCD? We need to have better narrative on things so we'll preserve them, you know, the need to do inventories of this and that. And then same thing with education. The Board of Ed has put in their letter, they want a section on education. What if we just tell them, give us 2 pages and we'll review it and maybe we'll insert it? Like,
Well,
we have to do that
I mean, look-
instead of waiting, you know?
Well, listen, I mean, we've already discussed the Board of Ed stuff and we had a conclusion that the consensus was we didn't need it or want it, whatever it was. And they had the opportunity and didn't do it after 6, however many months. So
Well, they put it in their letter that we just got. We just got a letter.
I
from-
understand, but they just said you do it. And we've already discussed that. And I don't feel the need, unless the
If
commission
they
wants to
write one-
revisit, hold on. Unless the commission wants to revisit it, so be it. But they had the opportunity to do it and they didn't do it either. So
This is our document.
I understand
We don't
that. And
you
we've
didn't do
already,
it, so we
we
don't
already addressed
care.
that. We've
We don't
already
just
addressed
say,
that.
You didn't bother, so we don't care.
We already addressed the topic.
I don't
had-
think we did adequately. And I think we should have a section on education. And
I
if-
think we did.
we should accept it. We shouldn't say, we don't want your work. If you want to do the work, we should put it in here if it's worded properly.
Well,
If it's-
Then they should have, I mean, listen, if they wanted to do the work, they would have.
Could I ask you, Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a question? If they submitted one, I'm making this up on Friday, I think we still have enough flexibility here where we could include it.
We don't.
I'm just not coming.
I think everybody would review any suggestions, but
I'm not coming
I'm
from the
just
school
saying-
thought where if they didn't do it because they didn't meet our supposed deadline, then sorry, you're out of
We
luck.
didn't
I
have a
don't think that's
deadline.
fair.
but
Yeah.
you guys are missing my first point.
not missing the
Before we
point.
even- No, you missed my first point. We already addressed this in December. So if anybody wants to suggest a topic, so be it. But we did address this, whether we wanted a specific section.
We
and
did
the
not
consensus
take a
was-
vote, and we did not take a vote. And something this important, that 60% of our town budget, several hundred acres of our facilities, potential impact from population density shifts, et cetera, et cetera. We never heard from the Board of Ed until about a week ago. And I don't know what the average to the actual Board of Ed. I know
We already addressed this topic. I don't know how else, am I wrong, Jim?
This is our 10-year
Emmeline,
plan.
Tom?
this is
if
our
I may,
10-year
Mr. Chairman?
plan. It's our 10-year plan.
I understand what it
Kathy.
is, Commissioner Braun, but we already addressed the
If I-
topic.
So we're just going to ignore it?
We
I-
already
Okay.
addressed the topic. We didn't
We
ignore
can
it.
address it again. We
Can-
can address it again.
Kathy, can I be heard, please? We did
Go
get a
ahead,
letter from the Board of Ed on January the 8th. In that letter, if you just strip away the narrative in that letter, there is some bulleted strategies that they want us to include on page 51.
God,
Short of doing, and we didn't get to it tonight, and I was prepared to speak to it. I don't think, as I said early on page 51, and we'll get to that chapter next, a community where people come together, they have some things that they would like to add to our strategies. Short of, and I believe Chairman Noonan is correct, there was the consensus that we weren't going to have a complete section on education, but in the Board of Ed is saying at a minimum, they would like to recommend, and they made some specific recommendations in their letter that we didn't get to yet. And I prepared for you, since this came up in the context, the Connecticut Post got a hold of that, was going to do an article. I sent you an email today. I understand from life circumstances, most of you probably didn't even get a chance to review it. I made a reply at the request of the Selectman's Office to respond to the questions that were raised. But at the end of the day, I will say this, I believe, I don't want to make this that an us against them situation. I don't think that's the case. I think if you please look at the response that I provided in an email today and absorb that, I think we're aligned. Overall, the message we're hearing from the Board of Ed is Stop building stuff in our stress school districts. We get it. We understand that. I think this commission is sensitive to that. Some of those things we can't control, and I try to explain that in my response. But long story short, they've made some, short of creating a chapter on education, which I think I agree with the chairman that the consensus of the commission is that we weren't going to do. In the alternative, they have made some really positive and welcome suggestions that I don't expect anybody on this commission would object to including, but we just didn't get to that section yet. That would be on page 51 of the plan. So please take a look at the material that I provided to you today. If anybody has any questions about that, please reach out. I'm happy to have the conversation.
In their letter, they said our board believes the POCD should include a section dedicated to the town's educational system as found in POCD plans of other communities.
Excuse me.
We stand ready
Excuse me,
to
but-
craft a section if desired. I would like to ask them to craft a section so we can include it. It's very simple, won't hurt us, won't delay anything. If they want to craft a section, would we reject it? I mean, seriously.
Excuse me, but I thought we were going to take the last few minutes to decide on how we were going to proceed. We're now immersed in the Board of Ed issue.
This
So
is how we're
can we take-
proceeding. We should
No, I'm
accept.
talking about when we're going to meet next, what we're going to do, when we're going to finish.
Well,
We
I would like
keep-
to know if we will accept an input from somebody who wants to draft an input. on this.
Commissioner Braun, but when have we never accepted input?
Okay, so they can do it.
They
Great.
can do it, but I'm just saying, we've already considered the issue. So if we want to revisit, if the commission wants to revisit it, so be it. And we'll see what the consensus is, and that's fine, but
This is our deadline is 22 months from now.
I don't think this conversation's getting us anywhere. So I
Well,
think that I said everything I can about the scheduling.
Right,
you know,
and
we
there's a
have
lot
to
more to
find
be
time.
said about including, thank you. So if they write it, we'll include it, or at least look.
That's, there we go. We'll consider it,
We'll
knowing
consider
that
it.
we already considered the issue already. So I don't think there's much more I can say about scheduling because a lot of it's going to depend on how our
Well, let me-
hearings
let me-
go.
Yeah, let me.
Guys,
let me
it's
just
getting late.
suggest something. Let me suggest something because we're here, you guys are at home. Can we agree that the process we followed tonight of looking at the blue pages and focusing on those items is how we're going to proceed in the future? We spent a lot of time tonight deciding what we were going to do. At least 45 minutes. So can we agree at our next meeting, we're just going to focus on the blue pages? Is that something we
Yes,
can
I
put to a
think we should
vote?
finish with the blue. Yes, we need to finish with the blue pages. And then we need to turn to, I think, the input that we've gotten today and anything else in the future. But the
Yes,
blue pages
so-
need to
so-
go through.
Right, so
If I
getting
have
back to,
times,
getting back to the
I will
Board of
submit
Ed
them.
and then the Conservation Commission, they provided us, Sustainable Fairfield provided us information that will likely be integrated in the non-blue pages, correct?
Depends on what they.
Yeah, in general.
It depends.
So,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, because as we go through this, I don't think there's very many stones unturned, but can we commit to focusing on the blue pages, going through line by line as we did in the second half of the meeting to gain some momentum on this? And could we all commit to reading the blue pages before the next meeting? And if possible, discuss with staff any questions for one another.
See you, Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, I've been
So-
trying to talk for 30 minutes, so it's getting a little
Oh,
frustrating.
okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say I actually had a suggestion. I actually wanted to write something about the history of Fairfield because I just this is separate process, but I recently read some parts of the Westport POCD and I thought it was interesting that they did include history, and I would be happy to write it myself because I think history is really important, especially to a town like Fairfield. So I just wanted to offer that.
That would be great.
I think we should. Yeah, and Jeff, I just want you to know, I think most of us do read things before coming to meetings. Okay, so let's just be very clear on that.
That's fine. And I get the sense that that's true. But what we need to do next time, though, is if you have questions about things that needs to be brought up, I think, to staff as far as what areas are being discussed, what does this mean, and things like that. I don't think we should be, I mean, I think we should be past those conversations.
No, and I think we've gone through all these sections before, right? And
I
that's
know.
another read. So.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of another
Yeah.
point of,
Yeah.
if you have questions about something specific, as far as background or anything, ask the question of staff earlier beforehand, so we're not doing it at the time of this meetings.
How do we address specific changes to the narrative other than in the strategy section? How or when do we do that? Do we submit a red line to you, or I have a lot of red lines I'd like to submit, and then they don't get posted, so nobody can find them again.
Well, I mean, anything you've submitted to Mr. Went gets submitted to all of us.
It didn't get posted on the website, so nobody can find it.
I don't think we should be posting things like that. I mean, that's just,
It's public record.
it's not I don't think our comments and edits are public record. I mean, you can make the edits
should be.
here. Well, I mean, I think sending out all these things shows potential division and differences, and all that's kind of a work product that we need to be doing. And anything you need to say can be said, obviously public record here, but I think that's just going to muddy the record. And we have a draft that we're working on collectively, and whatever the consensus is what the draft is.
So if we have red lines on narrative here and there, just send it in separately, like here's a page with some red lines, and then we could.
I mean, I would send everything that, I mean, I know we got red lines from you last time of like 2 or 3 pages, but I mean, if you have all the red lines and stuff, I would send it in, because sending it the day of or whatever is not, it doesn't help us, obviously. So right now, I think, as we said, we'll go through the recommendations, finish that off, go through the other input that we've had, finish that off. And any other red lines to narrative, I guess, would be up next. But I think the recommendations are key, so we should get through those.
Commissioner Harrison, do you have a comment?
No, I'm all set. Thank you for.
I'm sorry, Alexis, I can't see hands on my end, so I'm sorry.
No, I'm all set. I know it's late. You guys are there in person. I'm at home. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. So I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
Are we good for this evening?
Yes,
All right.
and Town Hill, great job going through everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for your cooperation. Okay, with that, I will adjourn